I want to welcome you to the Retro Rogues Live. Please pay attention to our warning graphic. It states that the Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. Parental discretion is advised. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. In the last 30 years, I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer. Worked on a lot of fun things that some people have heard of, such things as Justice League of America, Batman Incorporated, and Flashpoint Wonder Woman. My current labor of love, though, is actually Kirby Tees, my new t-shirt company. If you want to go over to kirbytees.com, you can check that out over there, as well as possibly purchase a Retro Rogues Live t-shirt. Help support all the fun things we have going on here at Retro Rogues Live. Again, that's kirbytees.com. But enough about that. I want to welcome back my co-host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks, hopefully watching or listening at home, some of the fun things that you have worked on as a creative professional.
Yeah, my name is Eric Alexander. I also known as Bass God 14. That's Bass God 14, not Bass God. Bass God, like a bass guitar. And I am the associate producer of a feature film called Occupants, which features Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo and is currently streaming for free on Tubi. And I did want to go ahead and acknowledge that we do have some folks in the Rogues Gallery. PJ, we haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you. It's always a pleasure to have Orville Nation out there checking out the show and providing some great comments and stuff like that. And he does like our avatars. He says you guys have the best avatars. But Orville Nation, we think you have the best avatar. How about that?
Well, there you go. And it's always great to have PJ here, a big supporter of Orville Nation and all the fun things that PJ has going on, actually with his YouTube channel as well. Very cool.
Incidentally, remember, we actually reviewed the Orville comic, and I don't know if PJ has read it. PJ, if you've read it and have any opinions on it, we actually did a review of the new Orville comic. So I'd be interested if you have any insight on that, PJ, because we did actually do a review of it in a previous episode. And sorry, I had a little glitch in the feed. It also says, nice haircut, bro. So, yeah, thank you, PJ. I appreciate that. It was time to crop it off a lot. And he did say he has not read the comic book. PJ, I can't believe it. You haven't read the Orville comic book. Shame on you.
Very cool. We do have a little bit of show business here just right off the top, if everyone would indulge me and if you wouldn't mind sharing my screen. I do have an event I want to promote that's actually happening this Saturday and Sunday. So this Saturday and Sunday, basically the Northern Arizona Cartoonists Association is actually basically several members. It's actually going to be 7 artists actually working on this now, not 5. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be drawing for Deshaun. So basically it's a 24-hour comics fundraiser. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to create a 24-page comic book in 24 hours. It's a kind of a slightly different version from the normal 24-hour comic day challenge. But as a part of this, what we're hoping is that people will be able to donate. D, as I know him, who's a friend and a member of NASCA, D recently has gone through some challenging medical procedures, and he's ended up with a lot of medical bills and stuff that he's trying to take care of. And so we at the Northern Arizona Cartoon Association want to support our brother, support our friend. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be doing, again, a 24-hour comics fundraiser. So basically, we're going to have all different kinds of tiers and stuff, kind of like a Kickstarter kind of thing. You could actually just donate directly actually to the GoFundMe to help out his family too, if you would just rather do that. But you'll be able to donate money and get original art pages. You'll be able to donate money and get copies of the comic book that we're going to create, as well as T-shirts and different things. So we're going to have that going on. That's going to be going Saturday from 12 p.m. until Sunday at 12 p.m. And it's basically going to be held live on the internet. So basically here on the Retro Rogues channel, we're going to be broadcasting it here. And this is one of the places where hopefully you'll be able to watch this. And we hope that everyone will support what we're doing, see if they have the ability to pledge and help out in this sort of this time of need. And as the tagline says there, we're not just friends, we're family. So just want to put that out there. We're going to be doing that Saturday to Sunday, 24 hours straight All of it's going to be working. We're going to have live streams. You're going to be able to see people drawing and creating the comic live on the internet as we're actually going. It's going to be in real time. So I hope people will tune in for that and check out what we have going on. Hopefully pledge and support. And let's help out Dee take care of these medical bills.
Very cool. And as PJ from Marvel Nation says, wow, interesting, Dave. So I hope that a lot of people are going to check this out. It's for a good cause. And I think it's really cool that you're doing this.
Yeah, we do the 24-hour comic. We normally do the 24-hour comic day challenge as NASCA members anyway, and we've done it every year. This would actually be this is our 4th year that we would have been doing it. Normally, it's done in conjunction with Clarktoberfest, which is actually for Clarkdale, Arizona. It's like a big citywide celebration that they do. And then this year, obviously, Clarktoberfest is not happening because of the pandemic and whatnot. But we still wanted to do something. And then, unfortunately, Dee's been going through these challenges, and we thought, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do this to support him and help out his family. So we just hope everyone watching and those of you who just stumble across this, if the event's still going on, we hope that you'll come over, see what we're doing. Hopefully, enjoy watching the live stream. It should work a lot like the Retro Rogue show, where people will be putting up people's comments and people will be able to interact with us. So it's not like it's going to be like a 24-hour stream where there's no interaction. People will be interacting with you. If you're watching, you're going to be able to make comments. We're going to be showing things, as we're working. It should hopefully be fun. It'll be a little different, but we just hope people would join us and, just come along for the ride.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And James is in the house, and he says, sorry, I've been MIA for a while. We have missed you, and we're glad you're back.
Glad to see you back, James. So, all right, so that's my kind of top of the show news here real quick. Do you have anything else you want to discuss, Eric, at the top of the show? Or
no, I don't really have any house business. I think I'm good to go into the review.
All right, well, there you go. All right, so I don't know if you want to pull up the graphic on your end, or I can pull up one on my end.
Let's see which ones I have.
Let's see here. Mine, of course, is there. You go. Cool. I don't know what it is of my picture viewer lately, but it sure does like to act up. It's definitely been giving me fits of late. So on this episode, for our review segments, we're going to be talking about Cobra Kai. We're going to be talking about season 2. We're going to be doing episodes 1 through 5. We're going to kind of run through them, kind of rapid fire, like we did last time. Taking a moment to kind of reflect and talk about the big moments from the show that we particularly enjoyed, that we think are definitely worth talking about. So we're going to go ahead and start off with actually the first one, the first episode, which is called Mercy Part 2. This is probably the seminal kind of episode for this one. This is the one I know everyone was really excited about because basically the first season ends with us segueing into Kreese's return. So this first episode, Mercy Part 2, deals basically with Kreese's return and how Johnny reacts. So I think that's not a very good synopsis, but at the same point, I think that's a pretty good setup because I know we're probably going to talk about this one a good bit. So, but basically, in the aftermath of the Cobra Kai's win at the Under 18 All Valley Karate Championship, Johnny questions his dojo's philosophies and ideals. And then there at the very end, obviously, Kreese returns. And that's kind of an interesting point to kind of start off with. So obviously, Kreese's return is a big moment, Eric, but what was probably your favorite part of this particular episode?
Well, that first episode is pretty awesome in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I think obviously it starts out like right from the top. It starts out really intense because you have this fight between Kreese and Johnny, something that I don't think any of us ever expected we would see necessarily. Obviously, the last time we saw the two of them together, Kreese was basically trying to kill Johnny. But this at the same point, I don't know if we really expected them to get into this huge fight. And they do a really great job, I have to say. You know, I've talked about how William Zabai really impresses me with his skills, and I thought the actor who played Kreese also did a really good job as far as selling that and everything. And I did want to just mention real quickly. I have to take the let's see here. I have to take the banner down for 1 sec. Technical difficulties, folks. Just 1 second there, because the banner takes up the whole thing. So I did want to mention that I wanted to pledge my my loyalty to Cobra Kai, and I actually found a Coors Banquet bottle beer. You know, it's funny. I was having trouble finding these, and I figured that there's probably a surge in these right now because of Cobra Kai. And of all places, I found it at Target. So that's my pledge to Cobra Kai there on the air, and how much I'm enjoying the show.
Well, there you go. There's a an official big. I don't know how to respond to that, Eric. I know you said you were going to do it, but I still don't know how to respond to that. First, we've got.
I will say this:
Batman.
I've never had this before. I've never tried it.
Yeah.
And I was really curious about if it's any good, and I have to say I think it's actually pretty good. I actually was surprised. I think it's a pretty decent beer. So.
All right. Well, there you go.
So I usually, folks, I don't like to drink at all, even if I'm just drinking out of my cup or something like that, and I'm just having like water on the air because I think it's kind of tacky. But in this case, I'm going to be doing it very deliberately on the air. Cobra Kai will never die.
Well, there you go. There you go.
And PJ seems to like it. He says, "Awesome, Eric. That's right." You can't do a Cobra Kai review without your Coors Banquet. You just can't do it. At least I won't.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I wonder what kind of things like that have kind of caught on with people. You know what I mean? Where they're like, you know, they're kind of like learning about, you know, maybe music they're not too terribly familiar with, or they are maybe thinking about going and studying karate. Or I'm curious what impact this is having. You know what I mean? Because I see a lot of people talking about the show, but you know, the original Karate Kid, I think that we had mentioned before, had a huge impact, you know, on a lot of people, because a lot of people actually started, you know, training in martial arts because of, you know, they were inspired by the original Karate Kid. So It makes you wonder, you know, if there's something similar happening now. So with Cobra Kai,
I wouldn't have ever even tried this beer if it wasn't for the show. Like I said, I've never had it, and I am quite a drinker. I do drink quite a bit, and I've never had this beer before. So I wouldn't have even tried it if it wasn't for the show. And James has a good suggestion. He says a chug for each segment.
Wow. Well,
make it last.
Yeah, there you go. All right, very cool. Well, I think for me,
hey, PJ says he wants to see us in Cobra Kai cosplay for the next show. We've got a week to see if we can make that happen, PJ. I actually would not mind having this. You know, this is a great image that we have right now. To me, I really like it. It's also the background, you know, that you sent me for the graphics, and I really like this. This is also a really good moment, which we're not quite to yet, since we're just on episode 1, but we're going to get there because this is a big moment in the show.
Yeah, I thought since, you know, because the first season, you know, Cobra Kai, especially the first half of the season, they're definitely riding really high, you know, because the Cobra Kai is definitely back in a big way. You know, they want, you know, they have the champion and, you know, is there with them, you know, so it felt like that this is and this is also, again, it's fun, those moments where you get to celebrate not just with Johnny, but also Miguel, because Miguel's one of my favorite characters in the show. And that's a big moment for him too. You can see he's there smiling. It's a big moment too for Hawk, you know, I mean, you know, the fact that especially as we learn going through season 2 how far he's come. I mean, we know that he's made quite a journey, but we don't really see just how much of a journey, you know, or potentially how dark of a turn he can take, you know. But as we go through season 2, we just learned a lot more about all these characters. But like I said, this is a big moment definitely for them, because they're really getting to revel and celebrate in what they've been able to achieve, with, like Johnny says, discipline and hard work, and, be willing to, strike first. I mean, they've managed to achieve a lot in a relatively short amount of time, just like Daniel did in the original Karate Kid movie too. So
Very true. Yeah. Again, that's part of the whole flipping the script, right?
it is. And keeping in mind that I can't wait until we get to the second part, which will be next week's episode, so we can discuss some of these crazy theories about what's going to happen in season 3. I'm definitely looking forward to talking about those. So, well, the big moment for me in the first episode is obviously the fight with Kreese and Johnny.
Right.
That goes without saying. I really like the choreography. If you want to really get knee deep into it, there's some martial arts teachers who break down what actually, like, the techniques they're using and all kinds of stuff. I feel like that's sometimes taking things like a bit too far. But there's
That's
all
cool, actually. I haven't seen that. I wasn't aware that people had done breakdowns like that. I think that actually would be kind of cool.
Yeah. There's actually quite a few. I've been kind of scouring YouTube, looking at all the different things in relation to Cobra Kai. And I've seen just about every, Samantha's the real villain in Cobra Kai. Daniel's the real villain in Cobra Kai. There's like, Tori's the real villain in Cobra Kai. Like all over the place. These crazy.
I think that's a good argument for Samantha.
Yeah.
I think definitely next week we'll get into that a little bit more as we probably do some predictions for season 3 and stuff like that. But I think, you mentioned that on the last show, and I think more and more, I think there's a good argument to say that she's the cause of all these problems, basically.
Well, it would make sense because Allie was kind of the lightning rod that kind of kicked off a lot of the stuff that happened in the original Karate Kid.
I don't feel like she was causing it. I mean, like we've talked about how fighting over a girl is about as common a thing, as time. I mean, it's happens over and over again. I don't think she was really instigating anything. You know what I mean? She was just sort of the object that people were fighting over. But Sam is different. Sam makes some very bad decisions. She's made some very bad decisions that really affect people. And of course, we'll probably talk about that more next week as far as what the effects of that are. But there's a good point to be made right off the bat with Aisha. She's in this picture as well. And what she did to her and the way that she ostracized her. And I've mentioned how I don't like her mother. I don't like Daniel's wife because she's so dismissive of the fact of how Samantha is treating Aisha, who's her best friend.
Right. For sure. So for me, that, like I said, that for me though, that's going to be the high watermark. Is actually the fight between Johnny and Kreese. Again, obviously, since we're going to season 2, I'm a huge big fan of this show. In terms of like, should you be watching this? If you have Netflix, my question is, why haven't you? You should be watching Cobra Kai. Because we didn't kind of talk about initial impressions. I just thought it'd be good to talk about like our big moments that we love the most.
Yeah.
Because obviously, since we're now 3 episodes in talking about Cobra Kai, obviously we like the show, so we're assuming that you like the show.
Right.
But
like you said, and if folks haven't checked it out, we're really recommending that people do.
Right. And in this episode too, talking about Kreese again, we kind of get a little bit of information, supposedly that Kreese has, he tells Johnny that he basically re-enlisted, but he's off the books or something, doing Black Ops stuff. Yeah. And he starts throwing around all these crazy things that he's been doing. And he talks about how like a snake will hibernate, but it stays awake until the time is ready for it to reemerge.
What is that, bromation?
Yeah.
Which I was not familiar with that term. I really like that and the way that he described that and everything. That whole sequence, it was really well written. I really like that.
And then Johnny basically tells him, okay, look, we're done, so I don't, Cobra Kai, the dojo's mine. I don't want to see her. So he pretty much throws down the gauntlet that, look, we're done, and that's pretty much where kind of their story kind of ends. in this particular episode. But it's interesting, kind of how all these things kind of unfold. But for me, the big moment is in this one is definitely going to be Kreese fighting Johnny. Do you have anything else in particular that you really wanted to single out that you really liked from this particular episode, Eric?
I do have some problems sometimes remembering what happens in which episode because I binge watched this, the second season in particular. I just watched it all back to back,
Well, here, let me do a synopsis just real quick because there are brief synopses available. So it just says in the aftermath of Cobra Kai's win at the under-18 All-Valley Karate Championships, Johnny questions his dojo's philosophy and deals with a figure from his past, which obviously is Kreese. And it says Daniel searches for the right way to respond to Cobra Kai's dominance, which is basically where he just decides he's trying to figure out what form or what role Miyagi-Do technically will play, in kind of the unfolding events. So.
And it's actually, even if I'm not sure if it actually happens in this episode or the next one, but either way, it should be a good segue to the next episode. Is the fact that Samantha decides to join Miyagi-Do.
Yeah, that's a big moment because obviously Robbie is there, and then Samantha decides to join, and pretty much that's it for the starter of Miyagi-Do. It's pretty much just Samantha, and it's just Robbie. But yeah, it's definitely a big moment. So let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and go into the next episode, and I'll go ahead and I'll just read the synopsis right off the top. So the second episode is titled Back in Black. It says Miyagi-Do is reopened with Robbie and Samantha as Daniel's first students. Daniel and Amanda meet their quota at LaRusso Auto because they have to hit some sales quotas in order to make sure that they're making money and the bills are getting paid. And it says Johnny lays down the law to stop his students from goofing off.
Yeah, there's a really cool image for the IMDb synopsis, and the image. I'm not sure if you're looking at it as well, but it's the image of Johnny and Miguel. Actually, they have that whole sequence where they're getting ready for their day. And then they kind of do the little fist pump and everything. And that's really cool because it's really neat to see that relationship develop as as intense as it is. I mean, it's a really, it's a really good, solid relationship that the two of them have developed as basically, mentor and student, as friends, almost Johnny's almost like a father figure, that kind of thing. There's a lot going on there, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it definitely is. And of course, this episode starts off with the shots with the Cobra Kai. I think isn't it a Charger? I think it's a Charger that they customize, isn't it?
I think so. That was the car that Daniel ended up giving to Johnny after Daniel's cousin torched Johnny's car. Yeah, and the customization is pretty cool. The way that it looks and everything like that. The way he has the car, yeah.
But they kind of set it up as really kind of fun and cool, and then you're seeing them getting ready for their day. Then they do the fist bump. They get in the car, and then they're riding around, going to do whatever they're going to do, heading to the dojo or whatever. And then they stop at a stoplight or I think it's a stop sign, and this car pulls up with these two girls, and they're kind of checking them out. Miguel doesn't know how to react. And Johnny's like, "Hey, play it cool, man."
That's right.
It's a great moment. It's a lot of fun, and that's the thing that's really cool because once we get into the second half, there's still some fun moments, but it gets pretty intense. And I found myself more kind of edge of my seat, and I can't believe what they're doing, and kind of shocked. Whereas the beginning of this season 2, there's a lot of really kind of fun moments. But Johnny's not thrilled essentially with how they handled certain things. And so he decides to kind of lay down the law and try and get them all back. You know what I mean? Kind of focus and like he tells them, you're all white belts again. Like he really puts the smackdown on them pretty hard. And it's kind of these first 2 episodes, really, it kind of segues from one into the next. That he's continuing to really crack down on them. And I think it's because he obviously doesn't like some of the things that he saw them doing during the tournament, even though it is stuff that he basically either influenced or directly taught them to do. He definitely does not want them to turn out like him. He wants them to be better than he
Right.
was. And it's very important for him. So,
and of
but I
course,
think
also Johnny's conflicted because the target of their aggression was his son.
right.
So
Right.
there's also a conflict there, a very personal conflict for Johnny.
Right, for sure. And then I can't remember exactly what episode it is that happens. I can't remember if it's this one or the next one. So my because I did rewatch all of these, but I did the same thing. I binge watched them, just one right into the next one, and they kind of run together. But at some point between these first three episodes, we do get and at first it comes across as a touching moment where Kreese basically shows up with Johnny's trophy, and he's like, "Hey, I got your trophy fixed, and you always won in my book."
Right,
you know?
That's right.
And you kind of feel for Kreese too. They kind of show you some things about what's going on in Kreese's life, and you kind of feel for the guy a little bit. And he seems like he might be a little down on his luck. He could maybe use like a little bit of a hand up, right? Like, and Johnny kind of wrestles with that, to disastrous results as the season goes on. But it's one of those things. It's like you kind of feel for Kreese a little bit, but there's always those moments and those musical stings that remind you that Kreese is a snake and he cannot be trusted. So,
he's a cobra. He's a cobra.
Yeah. So there you go.
He's been in bromation. He's been waiting for his moment to pounce. That's why I think that's such a pivotal scene in the previous episode where he's kind of explaining, his philosophy and
right.
what he's about. And, he's been waiting in the wings. Oh, I did want to acknowledge that Jackie's in the house and she said hello in the Rogues Gallery.
Hello.
And a little bit of, I guess, house business. Orville Nation was asking about Super Chat. We don't have Super Chat, Orville Nation. That's why it's not working.
Yeah, there is no Super Chat here. We're not worthy of Super Chat. We just have regular old. You tell us or comment something, we just put it up on the show. Doesn't cost you a dime. We have just regular chat. So that's kind of my big moment. I really like how the show opens on this particular episode. I think that's my favorite moment. I know there's more important thematic moments, but for me, I just love the shot of them, just that kind of back in black kind of moment, the fist pump and in the car. And it's just kind of fun. I really enjoy seeing Johnny and Miguel, kind of like riding high. Like it's fun. So for me, that's my big moment. Did you have a particular moment from this episode that you thought was worth kind of singling out? What was your favorite moment?
Well, one thing, again, I have to apologize. This is going to, I think, pop up multiple times in our review here. Is again, you were mentioning the episodes tend to run together simply because I watch them like, I just binged them. Right. And I can't remember if they have the sequence, the basically where they literally show the different training style, where they show Cobra Kai versus Miyagi-Do, where basically Sam and Robbie are doing the little dance, basically, the kata on the board in the water.
Yeah.
While the Cobra Kai is in a junkyard, basically being like, and they do the thing with the cement truck. Is that in this episode? Or is that?
I think that is in this episode.
That is a huge moment for me. And I have to say, it's funny because the first style of martial arts I was ever exposed to was Shuri-Ryu karate, which is the Okinawan style karate, and they do emphasize katas quite a bit, and that kind of movement and everything like that. But there was something about the way that Johnny was doing things that I really liked. It was so unorthodox and dangerous, you know what I mean? And in a lot of ways irresponsible, but it was just like, I really liked the whole image of that, like the using the cement truck, and that they had to work together to get it to roll. And just thinking about it, I get excited because I had like this really like, that's so awesome kind of moment when they got the cement mixer moving. And I also love that piece of music. It's actually called Like a Dance. That's the piece of music that's in the background. And I play that piece of music like constantly now because I just love that moment so much.
Yeah, I was trying to double check to make sure what episode it was in. And information is kind of all over the place, but it's definitely within these first 3 episodes. So apologies to everyone. We rewatched all of them, but like I said, the problem is
They
they're
run together.
just running together, because to me it just feels like a 5-hour love fest for Cobra Kai. So
That's right. That's
so,
basically
but no.
what it is. We do have someone else in the Rogues Gallery for the first time, actually, because I don't recognize his name, but he says he goes by TT, and he says I found a link on your Twitter profile. So TT, welcome to the show, and please feel free to comment, and we'll try to get to your comments as much as we can.
Very cool. So that sequence is kind of fun and really really cool, because I liked it too, because the basic tenet of is that Daniel is trying to teach Robbie and Samantha how to blend their movements, how to kind of move as one, how to basically sort of find harmony between the two. And so as they're kind of going through this and struggling with it, eventually he discovers that there's this, it's not really a table, but it's like a platform that sits on this water feature and in the back of Miyagi's old house, which also serves as the Miyagi-Do kind of training headquarters, or Miyagi-Do dojo. And so he's like, oh, so we'll have him work on this. So as they're learning to move with each other, right, as they're doing these different forms, this kata that he's taught them to do, at the same time, we get the kind of the musical montage, and we see how Cobra Kai is training completely differently. And that's the moment with the cement truck. And that is definitely after that moment where Kreese brings back the trophy to Johnny, because it kind of causes Johnny to say, well, wait a minute, maybe we can figure something out, right? So, and he kind of lets Kreese kind of in, because Kreese is there.
And ironically, I think
moment.
Kreese actually has concerns about Johnny's training method, whereas Johnny's is like, no, we're doing this, because I mean, there's no doubt about it that there's an element of danger there. It's even funny with the guy who brings the truck is like, hey, you didn't tell me that you were going to do this with a bunch of kids, so it's a funny moment.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And then TT actually has a good comment. He says, I see very few TV shows that continue a movie franchise that are on the same level of quality as the movies. Cobra Kai is awesome. And TT, I think, I know that I definitely agree. Eric, would you definitely agree with Cobra
Absolutely.
Kai?
100% I agree, yes.
As opposed to Blue Thunder, which we spoke about just briefly on the last episode. I love the Blue Thunder movie, but I hated the Blue Thunder TV show. So apologies to anyone out there who likes seeing, Dana Carvey.
You know what's funny is
Jaffa.
There isn't, we kind of take it for granted maybe as like Star Trek fans, but there's very few movies that actually have TV versions where they actually use the original cast. There's all sorts of examples of movies being made into TV shows, and they almost always change the cast, or maybe they have like one person. Stargate's a good example of that, where they change the cast completely, So this is in this case, you have a franchise that started the movies. Now it's transitioned to TV, and it is really cool to see that they have so many of the original cast members in it.
Yeah, and it continues to heighten too as we continue to move through, because our second part is going to highlight like a really big moment that I thoroughly enjoyed. I can't wait to talk about that one. I know Eric is a little disappointed we're not going to get to that one on this episode. We will get to it next episode. That's of course Johnny reuniting with the other Cobra Kais, the original Cobra Kais. So that's a really great episode with a very sad ending, unfortunately, that has some reflections in real life, no less, too.
Absolutely, yeah. And TT has another great comment he says, William Zabka, in my opinion, has great acting qualities now, great performance. I actually mentioned in one of our previous reviews on Cobra Kai that I feel like, he should have been out there, this entire time. I know he's done stuff. I know he's done like a lot of independent stuff. I think he's even gotten into directing and things like that. But not only am I impressed with his acting, but I'm really, I keep saying it, I'm really impressed with his skills, as far as being able to sell karate and the fact that he really looks like he knows what he's doing. And that really impresses me. It really makes me feel like he got a little bit of a bum deal, because he could have been, I think, a great action star, in the late 80s, early 90s, if he'd been given the chance.
Yeah, I'd have to say I would definitely agree. And then TT has a few more other really good comments too I want to highlight. And one of those is he says, get William Zabka into the MCU for sure.
That's a great idea.
Actually, what I just said last episode.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're totally on board with that. We're totally on board.
Oh yeah, for sure. He'd be great in the MCU. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I mean, in all honesty, I think he'd be great in the DCU too, but I think he'd have a much longer career probably in the MCU. It's kind of weird. Depending upon how they did it, there's a lot of characters he'd be great for, like in the DCU for sure, and the MCU too. But I wonder, like, what character would be really great?
Yeah.
Be really great fit for him. I've been thinking about that ever since I threw that out last episode. So,
TT says, as TT says, great minds think alike. Yeah. So,
there you go. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next episode, because we're kind of blending them together anyway.
Right.
So the next episode is called Fire and Ice. This is Daniel pulls out all the stops in the effort to recruit new students to Miyagi-Do karate. Johnny reflects on some of the major relationships in his life and responds to Daniel's promotional efforts with his own. So this episode's interesting. I think for me, obviously the big moment is the one that I picked the image for, which obviously is, where they're at the festival. I forget what they called it. I know it's like a town festival thing, but Daniel decides basically that he wants to promote Miyagi-Do karate, and LaRusso Autos has a big tie-in to this event, like they're a major sponsor or something for the event. So he decides, he's like, hey, well, we'll put on a demonstration. We'll be part of the theatrical thing. We'll promote LaRusso Auto out of it. It'll be great, right? And he kind of hoodwinks his wife into going along with it, because he's really trying to sell her on the idea that this is good, right?
Right.
And it starts off pretty good. They're starting to do their demo, and it looks really good, and everything's going great. And then Cobra Kai shows up and basically upstages him. With Johnny breaks a bunch of bricks that are on fire.
Yeah.
They actually do some, kind of, light contact sparring where there's actually, like real hits and stuff going on, and everybody's giving their all. And there's a lot of rock music, and like you see in the background, there's like fireworks and stuff, and they really pull out all the stops. Whereas Daniel's is more kind of serene and meditative, and kind of what we think of traditionally as karate, and then Johnny's is all rock and roll.
Right.
That's it's flash, it's rock and roll, it's fun, it's exciting. So so for me, that's the big moment from this episode, is obviously where Johnny upstages Daniel at the festival. What about you, Eric? What was your favorite moment?
Well, it's like you said. I mean, we've got the image up on the screen right now. It's the perfect image for talking about that, because that moment where you see Cobra Kai sort of in their triumph, you know what I mean? That they're really kind of hanging it over Miyagi-Do and Daniel, because they are like more exciting. They are kind of sexier. You know what I mean? The whole deal. And I love this image of them all together. You know what I mean? Just showing off, because, having watched the first season, you feel how much Johnny has accomplished, because literally, the first image we had of him, after the tournament is, he's basically passed out in bed, from a bender kind of a thing. And his life seems pretty pathetic. And now, this is kind of like the apex, for him, where he's really riding high. Like Cobra Kai is really becoming dominant, in the valley and everything, and really becoming a force to be reckoned with on multiple fronts. And it's kind of funny to me. Have you ever seen the movie The Foot Fist Way?
I've wanted to watch it, but I haven't actually seen it yet.
You have to see it because you'll appreciate it. You'll definitely appreciate it because I know you're into martial arts and stuff, and I know you like Master Ken, right? You like Amaradote and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
You're gonna
that's
kick out of
hilarious.
that. So if
Yeah.
you're into that kind of stuff, you're gonna like Foot Fist Way. Well, one of the big things in Foot Fist Way is that he keeps calling himself the master of the demo, and I couldn't help but feel Daniel was kind of being that guy from the Foot Fist Way. Like he's like, I'm the king of the demo, and then of course Johnny comes along and shows him who the real king of the demo is. You know. So because Johnny, I think, did a better job. It was flashier, it was funner, you know what I mean? It was bigger, you know. He just totally outshined him, you know.
Yeah. The big highlight when we used to do demonstrations at my dojo was when I would cut fruit apart on people.
Really?
With the samurai sword. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was the showstopper for us.
Do you have any video footage of that somewhere?
Actually, I do.
We need to show that sometime on the show. Maybe we can get that for the next episode since we're still going to be talking about Cobra Kai. If you're able to.
Yeah. If anyone wants to see that nonsense, I'll dig it out. So
you're the real king of the demo, huh, Dave?
No, it's not. Because it was funny because like my favorite parts of our demonstration that we did were the moments that were kind of like what Daniel did. You know, it's the Japanese flute music in the background.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of the more esoteric aspects of the art. It's the idea of, you know, blending and harmony, and because those are the things I love so much about Aikido. But you know, you have to kind of spice it up, and in our dojo we also did taijutsu, which basically just means that we did punches and kicks and that kind of stuff. So, but that was kind of the sexy, fun part of the demonstration. You know, we actually did a couple of school fairs, and we actually did a event at the Ronald McDonald House. I was actually Sub-Zero. I fought Reptile from Mortal Kombat as Sub-Zero. Had the whole outfit, the whole thing. So my other life, as I like to think of it. But no, the kind of the more karate stuff, that was the sexy stuff. That was the fun stuff, you know. But for me, you know, doing the forms with the Joe staff and all that kind of stuff, that's what I personally enjoyed, because I would do like a whole kata with the boken, but people didn't really ooh and ah until we actually pulled out the actual live blade and started cutting stuff in half. So that's when people got really excited. It's like, ooh. Yeah. So
that makes sense. And as James says, don't mess with the Dave.
I'm an old man now, James. I'm an old man. So it's not like it was back then. I wouldn't have messed with me either, but now I'm just an old man now, I think. But no, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed this particular episode for sure. And then TT actually chimes in and says that was a great episode too. He also liked it as well. So it's very cool. All right, so let's go ahead and let's move on to the next up. What did you said that you kind of felt the same way, right? The big demo was the big moment for you too.
Particularly the Cobra Kai thing. I really liked what the Cobra Kai did.
So the next episode is called "The Moment of Truth," which is a great song too. It says Daniel struggles to teach. Yeah. Daniel struggles to teach a new student. Meanwhile, Cobra Kai students wage war on Miyagi Dojo. Now, this is a very, very important episode. This sets up a lot of stuff. The thing that's most interesting for me about this one is the fact that you see Daniel. And it's interesting because, I think I'm having the same problem, Eric, because I feel like this episode, the next one, they kind of blend together. Because basically it's Dimitri, I think. Dimitri shows up at Miyagi-Do and wants to train because he goes to Cobra Kai. He has a bad experience. We don't see exactly what happens between he and Kreese, but you see him go out of the dojo and he's got like a bloody lip. And and Dimitri has an abrasive nature, I guess is the best way to put it. Like he doesn't have much of a filter, which in life, not having much of a filter sometimes gets you in trouble. So
it's a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So
I've known people like Dimitri and didn't get along with him. So
yeah, well, see, there you go. So so he has a bad experience with Kreese, and eventually he shows up at Miyagi-Do, and then we see Daniel struggling to train him, essentially, trying to use the same methods that basically, worked so well with him. And he thinks, well, if I can be trained, anybody can be trained. And what Daniel begins to realize is that maybe that's not entirely true.
That's right. Yeah.
What Miyagi did for him was for him. Maybe what Miyagi did for him isn't for everyone, which is an important thing to kind of reflect upon and think about, because as we know in life, not all things work equally for all people. And that's kind of a big thing. You kind of see Daniel really struggling with that idea. He's like, well, this should work. Why isn't this working? And it's kind of the second time that we see where Daniel has to rethink what he's doing, because maybe it isn't working quite the way that he expects, and he's having to adjust. And there's even a moment where he has a conversation with his wife, and he's like, well, I don't know about this. And she kind of gives him some advice. Eventually, she's going to give him, you don't need to do this anymore advice, but we're not there yet. But she does kind of give him some advice about how to kind of, you have to find your way. There's not just one way. You have to find your way, right? And so that's an interesting thing. And when we see Daniel kind of discover that and realize what he needs to do, even though it doesn't work quite the way he wants, for me, that was an interesting moment. What about you? And again, like I said, these next two episodes, again, they're kind of blurring together for me too, because I think I'm mixing parts of this one and the next one. Let's just reflect on Dimitri, because Dimitri has an interesting kind of story, how this kind of is going to all play out in the end. What did you think about that? I mean, I think they play it for laughs when Dimitri's like, I understand what you're doing, muscle memory, whatever. Can you just show me the moves?
Well, it's kind of interesting because to me, I don't know, Dimitri is not that sympathetic a character to me personally. Like I said, I've known people like that I didn't particularly like, people that are kind of know-it-alls and things like that. And I realize a lot of times that's sort of like a defense mechanism. That's definitely the case with Dimitri, because he is physically inept, to put it nicely, So it's kind of interesting. But the thing that I thought was kind of intriguing, and of course it has major repercussions for the rest of the season, is actually the introduction of Tori, because this is the episode where she walks into the dojo after seeing the demo. So she saw the demo and she decides that she's going to join Cobra Kai. But what's interesting about Tori is she already has martial arts experience, but we don't get any indication of where she got that from. And I thought that was kind of intriguing.
Yeah, and the introduction of Tori is a very important character. And it's funny because even though we're reading the synopsis, they don't kind of highlight or call that out.
Right.
Tori shows
that's
up.
Like a major moment, and they don't even mention it. Yeah. The synopsis.
It's a big moment, because actually, a big moment is where basically Miguel and Tori actually connect. And Tori kind of has eyes on Miguel. Miguel is still love lost or love lorn or whatever for Samantha. He's really wanted to see if he can find a way to repair that. And then Tori's just kind of slightly just, taken aback at that, because, obviously she thinks, she's the better choice. I think she is the better choice, but that's just me. Okay. I have a penchant for bad girls, I guess. No, yeah, it just, to me, it's really interesting. It's very important, the introduction of Tori. And I really like that actress. And, it's interesting. They posted on the internet. I forget where I saw it. I think it might have actually been on Instagram. They have a picture where they have actually the actors and the actresses and their stunt doubles from that scene where Miguel and Tori kind of fight when she first shows up at Cobra Kai. And it's interesting to see the stunt doubles, with the actors, because the actors are all pretty competent, pretty good at what they do. And you forget that there's stunt performers that double for them sometimes,
right.
But no, yeah, it's that's a really fun introduction, and she's going to play a very, very important role here as we're moving into these later episodes. But I think the big thing that happens for me with her is the fact that her and Miguel actually connect, and they have kind of the beginnings of a relationship where maybe it looks like he may actually move on from Samantha and have found someone new, which is interesting.
I did want to ask you because I feel like, is it just me? But I feel like the actress that plays Tori and the actress that plays Samantha look very, very similar. Do you feel that way or not?
I don't know if they look. I mean, they do look a little similar. I think they do a pretty good job of having them be different. But I think in all honesty,
I'm just talking physically. I'm not talking because it's interesting to me because remember, I didn't initially get to watch season 2 when it was on YouTube.
Right.
I only got to watch it recently now that it's on Netflix. And I've seen tons and tons of pictures of Tori's character, and I saw like little clips of her introduction and things like that. And I constantly was getting her confused with Samantha when I was seeing her in pictures and stuff like that, like real brief clips. I mean, when you see them in the actual show, the characters couldn't be more different. But I'm just saying, as far as just the physical look, I actually got to the point where I would actually get them confused just seeing quick clips and things like that.
Well, I think that is a little bit intentional because we talked the last episode. I talked a lot about the concept of the yin and the yang, and the diametrically opposed opposites that need each other to survive, essentially, right? I feel like that they're trying to show us it with Tori and Samantha opposites, maybe more stark opposites than really what we got even in the original Karate Kid between Johnny and Daniel. There is a lot of speculation and a lot of theory that Samantha's arc is going to act well. Can I do a little season 3 speculation real quick?
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so there's a lot of speculation about what's going to happen in season 3, and the thing I'm most curious and interested about is the fact that if you think back on the Karate Kid movies, the character that, in a manner of speaking, we actually learned the least about is Miyagi. Because why does he have all those cars? Daniel says, where did these cars come from? He says, Detroit. That's all he said.
Yeah.
And there's all this other stuff that's going on. And there's a lot of speculation and a lot of sort of rumor and theory and whatever that Miyagi's story is going to be kind of paralleled and reflected in between what's happening with Samantha and what happened with Johnny. That basically Miyagi kind of inadvertently got in between Sato and Kumiko, or whatever, maybe it's the wrong name, but the lady that he was in love with. And there's even some speculation videos where they say that maybe what happened is the reason Miyagi left is maybe Miyagi wasn't winning the fight with Sato. Maybe they did actually start to fight, and it looked like Miyagi maybe wasn't going to win. There's all these really interesting theories, and the ones I find most interesting is the fact that they say a lot of people feel like that Samantha's arc is going to kind of follow Miyagi's, so that when we get to Okinawa, as we're learning about what actually totally happened between Miyagi and Sato from a different point of view, vis-a-vis Chozen, right? That we're going to get flashbacks for what's going on between Samantha, Tori, and Miguel. This kind of love triangle gone wrong. And that they're going to use Samantha's story arc to help us better connect and resonate, since obviously Pat Morita isn't around, you know what I mean, in order to connect us with Miyagi's story. So while Chozen is maybe kind of relaying this information, Samantha's reacting to it, and we see clips for what's happened to her, and then we realize that her story is playing out in some ways like Miyagi's did. So it's an interesting idea. Oh. So there's a little season 3 speculation. So
not sure how I feel about that, but that's interesting.
Well, and like I said, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there about what people think is going to happen in season 3, and how they're going to give us, more information about Miyagi, right? And how they're going to do it is because I feel pretty much that they're gonna do that since we're going to Okinawa, and we're gonna learn some things about Miyagi that we didn't know. Because when I started thinking back on it, and I was like, we've seen a lot of Johnny's life. We get a sense of where he's come from. We've seen a lot of Daniel's life. We get a really good sense of where Daniel kind of comes from. But one of the major characters from Karate Kid that we get a little bit of information from, but there's still huge gaps. Even though, Karate Kid 2 is a lot about his story, there's huge gaps in what happened with Miyagi. At least that's how I feel. I feel like there's a lot of kind of connecting the dots and filling in the blanks that still needs to happen. Because I've always wondered that too. Where did all the cars come from? Why does he have all those cars? Why was he, working as a maintenance man, but then he's got this, house with all these cars? And there's a lot of things with Miyagi that don't quite make sense, and it seems like he doesn't have two nickels to rub together, but it just, I don't know. I'm really curious to see how they kind of fill some of that in. So I've gotten way off track. Sorry.
Well, speaking of Pat Morita, TT had a comment where he said it's a shame that Pat Morita passed away. It would have been amazing to see him kick John Kreese's butt again.
Yeah.
Which I always thought that's probably the coolest thing about Karate Kid 3 was the fact that you actually got to see them in a real fight, because I think a lot of people were let down a little bit by the opening scene of Karate Kid Part 2, because I remember living at that time and seeing that in the theater and the anticipation. And I think a lot of people wanted to see Kreese and Mr. Miyagi fight. They really wanted to see that. And it was kind of a letdown because, all Miyagi really does is just get out of the way, and Kreese basically beats himself, So which is kind of interesting when you think about it thematically and all that kind of stuff, that Kreese essentially did just beat himself, So it's not until Karate Kid 3 that we actually get to see them fight. And I think that would have been neat if Pat and Rita was still around and we could see them kind of go again, get their rematch as well. You know what I mean? That would be kind of interesting. So
right. And just to reflect for a moment, that's the Aikido principle, is that your attacker in the end of the day, which actually you're supposed to think of them more as a partner than necessarily an opponent in the highest forms of the art. But that's the idea, is that their own aggressive actions in the end actually defeat them, and that you can actually maybe use their own energy against them. And it does go back to reflect that thing that Miyagi actually told Daniel in Karate Kid 1. He says, best block, no be there.
Right.
So, and those are all important lessons. And in that moment, that's what Miyagi does. He kind of gives Daniel another lesson, and he kind of shows him literally the best block is no be there. So, but again, like we said before, is it the rock and roll demo? Is it the fun, sexy thing that everybody wants to see? No. But it is the serene, meditative, I have found my center. I am in control of myself and my world, that most people like to think that you can get from martial arts, right?
Right.
Hopefully that idea is what permeates Karate Do, as opposed to juice, anyhow, waxing poetic.
TT actually mentions, I like to think of it like Mr. Miyagi was just too fast for Kreese, which is an interesting perspective. And I like that maybe when it really comes down to it, Miyagi just had he's just got better ability. You know what I mean? He's too fast for Kreese. And,
Miyagi and Kreese and Terry Silver all did fight in Karate Kid 3.
Right. That's the best part of Karate Kid Part 3. In my opinion. So it's the only reason really to see it. In my opinion, is the fight with Miyagi and Kreese and what was the other character's
Terry
name?
Silver.
Terry Silver. Yeah. Which a lot of theories. Speaking of speculation, there is a lot of speculation that he's going to show up at some point in season 3. We'll just have to see.
Yep, I'm really curious. That's what I'm saying. I can't wait till next episode we can get more into all these crazy theories about what's going to be happening in the next season. So let's go ahead and go into the next episode here. This is going to be the big one for this particular episode, because we're going to stop our review for Cobra Kai right here with episode 5. And then next week, we're going to pick up with episodes 6 through 10 and then finish it out. And then we'll speculate a little bit. So, and this episode is titled All In. I'll read the synopsis here real quick. Again, this is episode 5 of season 2 of Cobra Kai. It says Daniel struggles to help a new student learn, which is Dimitri. Like I said, I was blending these two episodes together. Miguel makes a new connection. Johnny tries to repair a relationship. Tensions between the two dojos build to a breaking point. So this episode has a lot of kind of interesting moments in it. A lot of important moments, I think. So I think in all honesty, the big moment for me in this episode is where Daniel confronts Johnny at the end. That for me is the big moment. But we can't overlook what happens and thematically what we learn about Hawk and Hawk's confrontation or attack. Essentially, he tries to permeate on Dimitri. So to make a long story short, Dimitri posts a really negative review for Cobra Kai on the internet. And Hawk doesn't take too well to that. And then we see what Hawk's life was like before he joined Cobra Kai. And then we see where he is. That's how the episode starts. The episode starts with him being bullied and in tears and wanting to die because he'll never be anything. He'll never have a girlfriend. Like he's just at the super low point, and he doesn't think anything's ever going to change. And then right after that, we see where he is after training with Johnny at Cobra Kai, and he's on top of the world. He's got a hot girlfriend. Yeah, he's got these two lackeys.
Hot bitch girlfriend, by the way.
Yeah.
One of Samantha's friends. He actually gets.
Right. He's got basically his two lackeys that carry his bags around him for him because they want to be like him. He's riding really high, right? He's soaring in the skies like his Hawk nature, right? Like he's achieved an awful lot in an amazing short amount of time. In some ways, I like to think of him as sort of like the dark side Daniel, in a manner of speaking. If you take it the wrong way, even more so than Johnny, I think Hawk represents that idea, the dark side corrupting absolutely kind of idea. But man, it's so much fun to watch him. That's the thing. And we get the big action piece in this one is Dimitri and the Cobra Kais. Well, not Dimitri, but Hawk and the Cobra Kais decide to confront Dimitri. They're at the mall. Everybody's at the mall. Miyagi-Do students are at the mall. Cobra Kai students are at the mall, which is very 80s, I might add. It's a very 80s kind of thing. But anyhow, they're at the mall, and they find Dimitri at the comic book store. And Dimitri, again, he doesn't know how to back off. And he doesn't understand how to diffuse the situation at all. He feels like
that's a great way to put it. That's why Dimitri rubs me wrong. Like he is, there's like a big term in law enforcement. It's very popular right now with everything going on about de-escalating a situation, which I had to do quite a bit during my career. It's something that you're trained in, and Dimitri's terrible at that. He's one of those people that just kind of takes a situation and makes it a little bit worse.
Yeah, for sure. And he keeps kind of just throwing it in Hawk's face. You were a nerd. You were a nerd. You were a nerd. You were a nerd. And he won't stop. And Hawk doesn't want to have anything to do with that because he sees that as the life of a failure and a loser. And he doesn't want to be that person anymore. He wants to be this new person that he has become.
He wants to be Hawk.
Yeah. And so it just makes it even worse for him. So, in typical stupid fashion, because I feel like Dimitri kind of caused this, because Dimitri's like, we're not the only ones to learn karate. And Hawk's like, okay, all right, well, let's see what you got. And this starts a fight that eventually turns into basically Cobra Kai versus Miyagi-Do in the food court. They take the song from the original Karate Kid movie, Danger, and we get them kind of running through there, which, of course, was the classic, in my mind anyway, classic song from Karate Kid, where obviously, they're running from the dance, the Cobra Kai's from the skeleton costumes. And it's where we see Miyagi save them for the first time. So Dimitri's basically being run down by the Cobra Kai's, but the people that come to his defense is Samantha and Robbie. and they actually display the lesson that they learned from Daniel about how to move as basically, well, at two, move as one. And so we see them kind of, putting into practical application the things that they were learning when they were on the floating platform at Miyagi-Do Karate. And that's a really fun sequence. But I still think the really big one, though, is what happens later. But tell me, Eric, what were your thoughts when you were watching kind of all this stuff unfold with Hawk and Dimitri and how that kind of went down?
Well, as TT is saying in the chat, Hawk is turning into a really strong character. And he mentions he's not a nice character, but he's a strong presence of a character. And I totally agree with that. And I really thought the moments with Hawk were really interesting. And it's kind of funny because, as I said, I'm Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai will never die. That's the way I am right now. That's just because I'm just enjoying what's going on. And so, I kind of wanted Hawk to win, you know what I mean, in that fight and everything like that. I thought it was done very well. It's definitely pretty epic. It does stretch believability a little bit, that they would have this big fight in a mall, food court, and like, where's security? You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. Like, I actually was a mall cop at one time. I did do security in the mall. And we did break up fights occasionally, you know what I mean? So it does stretch the believability a little bit, but it's definitely a huge moment, and it's choreographed well. It's a really good action sequence. I just kind of wish Hawk had won.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing, is that you and it's interesting because watching this scene, I reflected on the fact of how I felt watching Miguel in the tournament. I want Miguel to win, but I don't want Miguel to win the way that he is handling it at times. It's that question of philosophy, right?
Right.
Like, for example, like, I want Hawk to be strong. I want him to be powerful. I want him to have the hot girlfriend. Like, I want to see him do well because, you see where he came from, and it's empowering to see someone build themselves up, and find that strength from within, because that's part of what martial arts training is hopefully all about, is through discipline and hard work. You kind of discover, or you can awaken, or you can find your center, and you can build yourself up stronger than you were before, more confident, more capable, more disciplined. And you can take those same lessons that you learn and apply them to all aspects of your life, which is actually something that, again, comes up later in this episode, but in a different way. And you want that, right? But then when you see kind of how that goes down, and then you see them kind of misusing it to an extent, it does have me questioning. It's like, well, because it's weird, because I've been both people.
Right.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that's really weird for me. I've been the comic book nerd who was bullied, right? But then I've also been the guy who learned martial arts, who found himself in a couple of situations he shouldn't have been in and was able to handle himself. Like, I've been both people,
No, I relate to that very well, because I was kind of ostracized in junior high, and felt very much like sort of kind of the nerd, and very much like an outcast in junior high. But I kind of came into my own in high school, and I ended up lettering in wrestling, and actually had the Letterman jacket and everything, and that's a big deal. You know what I mean? In high school, that's a big deal. And it got me a lot of recognition. Girls would talk to me just because of the jacket. You know what I mean? So I understand that as well, going from that transition. Again, like you said, I've kind of been on both sides of it.
Yeah, and it's a weird place to reflect upon, for me, because it's like I've been both people,
right?
And at the same point too, and also in a bad way too, I've been both people, and then when I watch scenes like this, and this is the thing that makes Cobra Kai really good, because it causes me to question choices that, and things that have happened in my own life. Go, oh, that's like this, or hey, that's like that. And it pulls me in even further, because I have a better sense, of what these characters are going through. And I've been in moments where, when I think back on my life, I'm like, man, I shouldn't have said that, or man, I shouldn't have done that. Like, I see now why that wasn't the right way to handle the situation. And I did make it worse. At the time, I didn't think I did anything wrong, but in hindsight, you go, you know what? I did make that worse. My opinionated whatever didn't help that particular situation.
Right.
Right, wrong, and different, it doesn't matter. I made it worse, right? And so it's an interesting thing to reflect upon. And that was one of that whole scene. It starts at the comic book store that eventually ends with the big fight that happens in the courtyard. I enjoyed all of that, and it's a lot of fun. But that's the thing I was most surprised is how much I found myself questioning things and thinking about things. Kind of an action sequence, you shouldn't necessarily be thinking about those kind of things. You should just be wrapped up in what's happening. But I found myself questioning all the things that led them to where they are, And they have a little funny moment where Samantha goes, "Oh, we saved your chicken,"
Yeah.
They saved his bacon too, right? Like I thought it was kind of funny. And that's the thing. It's like the writing on this show is so good because it works on so many different levels, just like the original Karate Kid did, where someone makes a comment after something happens and it just goes to, it's like the dot on the I. It's like the cross on the top of the T. It's just like ding, there you go, right? And I thought that was really kind of a fun moment. So that's a big.
We actually have another comment that TT had going back to Hawk, which we kind of forgot about this, and this really is significant. He says, when Hawk stole Mr. Miyagi's medal, that was next level bad guy to me. And that's a great point, because that was one moment that I had no sympathy for Hawk, because to me, the Medal of Honor is like the biggest thing there is, as far as achievements and respect and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that Hawk actually stole Miyagi's Medal of Honor, that really did that's kind of a low point for me in terms of Hawk's development as a character.
Right. And I was just about to say that's where we're headed here, because that is the big moment that kind of sets, that starts the ticking clock on the bomb. Okay, because that's what happens. Basically, there's a series of events that happen in this episode, and I feel like it starts the clock ticking, right? And then basically what we're looking at now is we've got a ticking bomb, and it's sort of like, well, how's it going to go off? Who's going to be within the blast radius when it, who's going to come out? Who's not going to? Because that's what I feel like with this episode, because this is we've seen Daniel angry before, but I've never seen anything like the anger that he has in this particular episode. So basically what happens is, we've already kind of set it up. In order to pay them back for losing, basically in the courtyard, because Hawk ends up losing his girlfriend. He's really mad and he's angry, and he lost the fight, right, to Miyagi-Do, and he's just in a bad place. He goes into the dojo, he's all angry, and he's just trying to work out his aggression. And who's there? Kreese is there, right? And just like the little devil on your shoulder telling you the wrong thing to do, Kreese is like, well, you don't have to lose the fight, or the fight's not over until you say it's over. I forget his actual advice is, but he basically gives Hawk really bad advice. And it's sort of like, it isn't over until you say it's over. So, go strike back. That's what you got to do. You got to strike back. So Hawk with some of the other Cobra Kais that go to the Miyagi-Do dojo, and they basically tear the place up, do a whole bunch of damage. And I think in the whole show, I really like Ralph Macchio on the whole show, but I feel like that this episode has the strongest moments actor-wise for me. You see him reacting to the fact that they stole Mr. Miyagi's Medal of Honor, and he's holding the box that he made in Karate Kid 2 to display it, right? And that's that classic scene where Miyagi says, he says, "This say you brave," and he touches and points to his heart, and he says, "This," and he points to the Medal of Honor and says, "You're lucky." And that's a big moment, and it's really important. And Daniel is really, emotionally distraught by this, and it really unnerves him, right? You can tell it really rattles him and it really upsets him. But when it really gets to the next level, as Samantha calls out his name, he goes outside, and they have spray painted Cobra Kai Never Dies on the side of the card that was a gift from Miyagi to Daniel on his birthday. And that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. And that's when I thought they're about to fight, because I rewatched it for the show here, but I had already started watching and I couldn't stop. And I already binge watched all these a while back. So when it first was on Netflix, and I was just, and this is the moment where I thought, it's on. Johnny and Daniel are about to fight. Like, there's just no way it's not going to happen. I don't understand what the context is going to be, because it's the middle of the season, so it doesn't make sense, but they're about to fight. They're going to have it out, right? And so Daniel takes off. He goes goes storming into the the Cobra Kai dojo. And then Johnny's like, hey, take your shoes off. You're disrespecting the dojo. It's like would you disrespected mine? And then they have this really intense conversation. And like I tell you, like for me, for Ralph Macchio, this was the strongest episode, because I bought everything he was saying. And he's got some really great lines where he talks about, a sensei doesn't teach destruction and disrespect. It's just for me, it was a really powerful moment. That's the big moment for me. And then it looks like it's on. And then Daniel tells Johnny right to his face, well, I'm not going to throw the first punch. And he's like telling him, let's go right now. And then earlier in the episode, and we haven't talked about this because Robbie's my least favorite character in Cobra Kai, but earlier in the episode, Johnny is trying to figure out what's going on, because Kreese keeps telling him it's not good that your son is with Miyagi-Do. So Johnny's trying to find a way to kind of bring his son back into the fold. He realizes that obviously Robbie isn't living at his house with his mother where he's supposed to be, because they've been evicted. There's an eviction notice on the door. And then he comes back around and he comes back to his apartment. He's drinking because he's found out that Robbie is basically living, and not just training, but actually living with Daniel too, that he's actually moved into their house. And so he's completely drunk. And it's Miguel's mother who kind of tells him, you have to find a way to be better, right, than what you are, right? And she kind of gives him this advice that, I know that you guys had this rivalry and whatever, which is something we've heard from Daniel's wife too. And she basically tells him, you have to find a way to be better than the moment, right? And so he, in a weird twist of fate, Johnny decides to de-escalate. I'll use your word, Eric. De-escalate the confrontation and take it down a notch and say, well, I'm going to be the better man, the bigger man, and we're not going to do this. And that sets up a huge reaction within the whole dojo. So what did you think about that moment, Eric? What were your thoughts? What were you thinking about as this was all going down?
Like I said, the mall moment kind of sticks out more in my head than that moment. I do think that it's neat to see Johnny's progression, because that's very much what Cobra Kai is about. And yeah, there's that idea that, he is going to be the bigger man and the better man. Also, I did want to acknowledge that PJ had to take off. He said night, and great show, guys. And for those of you that are not familiar with Orville Nation, please check them out. They've got great content on that channel. We appreciate PJ stopping by. And TT mentions the writers on this show deserve a medal. And I've said that myself, not that specific words, but I've talked about how great the writing is on this show. And that's a good example right there, talking about with what was going on with Johnny and just his progression, that he does decide to be, quote unquote, the bigger man. And he's not going to throw the first punch, because he's changing. He's evolving. He's not the same guy that we saw in the original Karate Kid.
Yeah, it's a big moment. And then the aftermath of what happens is Daniel throws down the gauntlet and says, look, he may teach you how to fight, but he can't teach you how to win at life. And with that, he kind of says the door is open to Miyagi-Do. He walks out, and to Johnny's dismay, quite a few of his students decide to leave. And it's the students that we've seen sort of struggling kind of with the Cobra Kai training anyway. It's some of the different characters who actually participated in the raid on the Miyagi-Do dojo with Hawk. it's the characters you see in the background questioning, going, I don't think this is right. I don't think this is right. I'm not sure if this is right. And so we see a lot of those characters leave to go basically with Daniel. And then basically, of course, we've already seen through to the end of the season, but they are going to form this new nucleus of what's going to become Miyagi-Do Karate, basically in the second half of season 2. But for me, like I said, I like the malls. The mall fight is fun. But the big moment for me, in all honesty, is that confrontation between Johnny and Daniel at the end in the dojo. Because, like I said, it's the first time, because we've seen Daniel mad, but it's the first time I feel like there's some real righteous anger coming out of him. Before, he's kind of mad because how dare you bring this thing back, and it brings back a lot of stuff. But I think that's really where the gauntlet gets thrown down. And of course, Daniel blames Johnny for that, when in reality, Johnny had nothing to do with it.
That's right.
That
Exactly.
was Hawk, and that was Kreese at the end pulling the strings. So,
Absolutely.
very powerful moment.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is one of those moments where you do kind of feel like he has absolute righteous anger. Whereas before, we kind of mentioned like what he did with like getting Johnny's rent hiked, and some of the stuff that Daniel was doing before seemed absolutely petty to me.
Right.
He was just kind of throwing dirt in Johnny's face, because of the role reversal, which is interesting too, to kind of see Daniel kind of being a little bit of the bully. But in that circumstance, he's absolutely justified in how he feels, but he doesn't really know what's happened. And he's going off half cocked, not really knowing what the facts are. He's making assumptions. And it's a bad thing to do. It's a bad thing to do in life. I do want to mention that one of the rare moments where I have an issue with the writing was I did think it was a bad decision, and this comes into 2020 hindsight, and I guess can be kind of like a teaser for the next episode where we finish season 2. But I do think that it was kind of a weird, I'm just going to say it, I think it was a bad decision to have Daniel's students come from poaching Johnny's students, and basically having the situation where Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do are literally like destroying these friendships, because you literally see that like there's sort of like mirror images of these guys that are like friends, and they're going to Cobra Kai together. And once Daniel does the poaching, you see a lot of those friendships break up. And of course, it started with Hawk and Dimitri, you know what I mean? Because they were very good friends, and it kind of starts with that riff there. And I do kind of question that choice. One thing that's interesting to me is that the jocks, the original bullies, are completely gone in season 2. They don't even exist anymore. And I think that they should have done something with that, and they could have used that more instead of the path they went. So it's my one kind of little criticism of Cobra Kai. That's one decision I really question that the writers made.
And this allows me to bring up something that I brought up last episode that I was kind of surprised, because with the release of season 1 actually on like Blu-ray and available actually to purchase for those people who want to purchase it in physical media, they have some deleted scenes. You can find a lot of those deleted scenes on YouTube. But one of those deleted scenes is really interesting, where basically Johnny he's also trying to poach students, right? And he's outside actually a jiu-jitsu school. Right. I mentioned this last episode. He's handing out these flyers. And I want to bring that up now because we're far enough into season 2. I can just go ahead and throw this out there, that I was kind of surprised that at no point so far has there been any idea of taking MMA and having MMA being like a third kind of antagonist. Where they're sort of like, well, karate's not real and it doesn't work. Only MMA is the best. Like, I was really kind of surprised that the writers chose to keep the conflict, really, in all honesty, between Miyagi-Do and between Cobra Kai, between Johnny and between Daniel, because the larger argument, the larger thing to really question is just the general tenor of the idea of what is karate's place in the modern world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it has a place in the modern world and it can be very important. But that's something because that's the only thing I would nitpick, is that I feel like the show doesn't at any moment, and this is so nitpicky, it's stupid to even bring up, but it's the one thing I thought about even when I was watching these episodes the first go round. I was surprised that the writers at no point decided to say, well, let us examine karate in the modern world with the existence of MMA. Does that change anything, right? Or does it stay the same? So I thought that was an interesting choice. I mean, do you see that too, Eric, or do you think I'm just kind of blowing smoke?
Absolutely. I think that's. I thought they were going to do something with that, especially. I mentioned it in our last review because the original bully was a wrestler, and of course, I wrestled in high school too, and so I thought that was like a total in because obviously a lot of the best MMA fighters are wrestlers, and I thought that was totally going to be an in that they could kind of address that a little bit, but they haven't played with that at all.
I just thought it was an interesting angle, and I honestly thought that's something that we were going to do. That with Miguel kind of emerging to be like the best in the All Valley, and his rivalry that he kind of had with those bullies, I had wondered if that's what was going to come about. That eventually, we were going to have another tournament or something, but it was going to be more of a mixed martial arts scenario, and maybe it would be Miguel having to prove that he is really, truly, genuinely better against the bully from the first season, where he's able to wrestle and you know what I mean, and use
that would have been interesting. I think there's a little bit of a missed opportunity there. TT had a comment going back to what I was saying earlier, and he was saying that I can see that. I just put it down to Kreese's poison, pushing those students away and into Miyagi-Do. And of course, I was talking about Daniel poaching the students from Cobra Kai. So, and I can see that too. I mean, they are putting it really on Kreese, that Kreese is kind of instigating a lot of this because, well, he's instigating a lot of this even without Johnny knowing what's going on. So he is kind of the puppet master pulling the strings to some extent, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And now I want to call it out to Jane is in the house over in the Rogues Gallery. Hi, Mom. My mom's here. Glad to have you here, Mom.
Hello.
So, well, I think at that point, I think that kind of wraps up our kind of our just general review of the first 5 episodes of season 2 of Cobra Kai. Again, next episode, we're going to talk about episodes obviously 6 through 10 and wrap it up. And then we'll actually do some speculation, what we think maybe might be happening in season 3. Or what we might like to even just see happen in season 3. We hope that you'll obviously be here and continue to chime in and add your voice to the discussion.
Very cool.
Awesome. So for those who may be new, we do have 2 more segments that we're going to do here on the show. The next segment is actually called the Pop Culture News. So I'll set this up real quick. So basically the pop culture news segment, we talk about anything we think that's interesting that's happening in the world of pop culture news. Things that pique our interest, things we think might pique your interest, anything we think that hopefully you might find interesting or worthy of discussion. We cover that and we discuss it here in Pop Culture News. So tell me, Eric, what do you have up first for this episode's installment of Pop Culture News?
I actually have some serious news to start out with. I don't know if TT's going, because he did say good review, guys. We appreciate that, TT. And he says, nice to meet you both. And we appreciate you being here, TT, because you were very active, and we like that. We like it when the Rogues Gallery is actually making comments and stuff. So we really appreciate that. So I do have to start off with some very serious news, unfortunately, just because I think it's important to call attention to things like this when they happen. Obviously, there's a lot of tragedy out there, and we can't cover everything, but I did come across this and felt that we should address it. I talked with Dave before the show that we should address this. So this is from The Wrap, and it says, Battlestar Galactica cast voices supports for co-star Michael Hogan after, quote, massive brain injury. It says accident left him with complete paralysis on his left side, memory loss, cognitive impairment, and an inability to swallow, Hogan's wife Susan says. For those of you that don't recognize the name, I'm sure you recognize the face. This is the gentleman the actor who played Colonel Ty in Ronald D. Moore's version of Battlestar Galactica, not the original Battlestar Galactica. And I think actually did a fantastic job. as Colonel Ty. He went through incredible character arc, I think, in the Ronald D. Moore version of Battlestar Galactica. There is a GoFundMe that is available if you want to help out his family. Like I said, they're saying that he's basically paralyzed on his left side. He's experiencing memory loss, and he has an inability to swallow. I can kind of relate to this personally because, unfortunately, my dad had a condition where he could not swallow for almost 10 years, and he was on a feeding tube for almost 10 years. So I know how devastating that can be and how terrible that is if you can't swallow because you can't eat. And eating is such a normal pleasure that we all take for granted. And if you can't eat, it just sucks. So anyway, I did want to call attention to this. As I mentioned, there is a GoFundMe page set up for Michael Hogan. And, if you can't contribute, think about, most of you have social media accounts, get the news out there, let people know that this is going on, and hopefully he can get some help.
Yeah, our thoughts and prayers obviously go out to Michael Hogan and also to his family that's having to, deal and, try to help him hopefully recover and, whatever level of recovery he can have. I mean, I can't even imagine what he must be going through. I can't even begin to fathom it. So,
apparently what caused this was an injury back in February. And my understanding is it was actually at a convention. It was a convention appearance of all things. He fell, and that's what caused the brain injury.
Wow. And that's the thing that I've always, they always talk about that, I used to kickbox, for example. And I took way too many shots to the head, and I've had a couple concussions and stuff. And so, they're always like, oh, we gotta do the CAT scan. We gotta look at your brain, make sure you're okay, and whatever. And I was hit by my own car. It's a long story. We'll tell that some other time. And I had a CAT scan then, and they're always like, it feels silly at first. When they start talking about, hey, if you experience this, if you experience that, let us know right away. They're very concerned, and it feels silly. It's like, well, I just hit my head. But then you don't reflect upon how much damage can be done, and from just hitting your head. Yeah. So,
I always think of the Sam Kinison story, and I was aware of that when he died. And I'll never forget that there's the accounts that Sam Kinison, after his accident, which proved fatal, he was walking around, he was talking, he was joking. That's what the story is. And then all of a sudden he just dropped dead, And again, that's because he had hit his head. And no one realized that he was probably hemorrhaging internally in his head. And he was able to walk and talk, and everybody thought he was fine, So, yeah, head injuries are no joke. So you always have to be really, really careful about that kind of stuff. And TT is sticking around, and you mentioned, I was a fan of the original BSG. I did not see much of the new one. And I will say, TT, I am a bigger fan of the original Battlestar Galactica, personally. That's just me. I am a bigger fan of the original, but I have seen most of the new Battlestar Galactica, the Ronald D. Moore version, which is actually, right now, it's currently available on a network called Comet. And I actually watch it on Comet quite a bit. A lot of the episodes I missed when it was originally on the Sci-Fi Channel, and I've actually been able to see them on Comet. And TT goes on to say, it's sad to hear that happen to anyone. And again, I can kind of relate to it because of what my father went through during the last years of his life. Not being able to swallow really, really sucks.
Wow. Well, again, our thoughts and prayers with him and his family. And again, if there's anything you can do, at the very least, if you get a chance, share the links around, make people aware.
Exactly.
It always helps. So
even if you can't contribute, make sure that you just let people know.
Right. So let's see. What do we want to do here? Let's do something completely silly to the point of why are we even covering it? So if you'll share my screen. So this is actually coming from GameSpot. I just thought this was kind of fun. This news actually broke. I'm usually the one who talks about the collectible stuff, which is so funny because I'm not really buying a lot of things, but I keep finding some things that, ooh, that looks cool. So anyhow, Marvel Legends are going old school with retro packaging and figures. And this is by Matt Elfring. This says, check out Captain America, Black Panther, Iron Man, and more in the upcoming fall set. So base says the next wave of Marvel Legends figures will pay homage to the past and a bit smaller than the action figures you may be familiar with. But Hasbro has some pretty cool new Marvel Legends under the Kenner label coming this fall that look a lot like the toys you grew up with. So the Marvel Legends retro toys are featured in a Marvel Comics Presents box designed to look like an issue of a long-running comic book series, 2 figures in each pack. The toys come in 3.75 inches apiece, each pack retailing for about $20. First up, check out Captain America and the Black Panther. So I just thought this was kind of fun. Obviously, you can tell this is definitely retro style, old school kind of looking stuff. But here's the box that they come in. I thought this looked really cool. See how it looks like an old.
I like that classic look. That's cool.
Yeah, I do too. And then let's see if we can get. I don't know if I can get it to. The only problem is I don't know how to get the thing to change on my phone. It's just got a little clicker button. But anyhow, the action. Oh, there it is. Here we go. So these are what some of the action figures are going to look like, and so that's like a very classic Cyclops.
That's definitely looks very retro to me. Very retro Rogues. That definitely looks like that's a very retro look to me.
Yeah, and then I just actually activated a Pinterest thing. I didn't mean to. Well, that looks like that's going to be the end of this story. Anyhow, it's over there on GameSpot, retro-looking action figures. Let's stop that right now before I make myself look like too much of a fool. Like on my phone, it had this little neat little button, and you could see what Black Panther looked like, Captain America looked like, and they're like the classic style. I was like, oh, that's really fun. We'll talk about that on the show. So, well, there's my first story. Bit of a bust there, but anyhow, that retro Marvel line's actually going to be coming out in the fall. I'm sure it'll be out hopefully by time for Christmas. There's a big shocker, right? Bet you didn't expect that.
No, not at all.
I
do like the packaging. I like the artwork and everything like that. I think that they look pretty cool.
Well, the Captain America looked really cool. It was like a classic comic book Captain America, and I always have my eye out for a really good classic Captain America action figure. The more retro, the better for me. So
pretty cool.
Yeah. So what do you have up next, Eric?
Well, I had actually teased this on my Twitter post, so I got to make sure that I get to this. There was some breaking news. This is just something that I just came across. This is an article that's dated September 23rd today from the New York Post, and the title reads: Zack Snyder plans to shoot new Justice League scenes next month. So apparently, this has not been confirmed by Warner Brothers yet. But it does sound like they are going to actually start shooting scenes for the Snyder Cut of Justice League next month in October. So that's pretty cool for those of you that are looking forward to the Snyder Cut. One of the things that this article talks about is that basically Snyder does not want to use any footage he did not shoot himself. So that's why that's a big reason why these reshoots are occurring. So it's going to be interesting. So apparently he is not going to use any of the material that he did not shoot himself. He's going to be shooting new scenes for the Snyder Cut of Justice League.
Very interesting. And something I thought I would add to this, I think is kind of cool too, is which we haven't covered it here on the show, but I think a lot of people may be aware, but Henry Cavill did sign a new contract with Warner Brothers to return as Superman. And apparently it was like a 3-picture deal I was hearing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he is going to be Superman for a little while longer, which is really great. I mean, I liked Henry Cavill as Superman. So
even though I've mentioned I have issues with Man of Steel, I have a lot of issues with Batman versus Superman. I actually liked the Justice League, which I think is kind of funny considering where everybody's at right now. I actually enjoy Justice League, but I do very much like Henry Cavill's portrayal of Superman, even though I have issues with the writing and things like that of the various movies.
Right. So it was interesting to read that, and then it's interesting here. We've got that, they're getting ready to shoot new scenes. Because as we know, Affleck is going to come back, obviously, to do these reshoots. We know that he's actually going to have a presence of some kind alongside Michael Keaton, actually, as Batman as well in the Flash movie. So I'm very excited to see what DC's got cooking up. So should be fun.
I'm definitely looking forward to the Flash and seeing what they're going to do there, because I've heard all sorts of rumors that they're going after everybody. So we'll see if that's really true or not. Like in terms of ultimate versions of all these different characters that have been in TV and the movies, kind of like what the CW did with the Crisis, the Crisis storyline, where they actually are going to all these different actors that have portrayed these characters in various incarnations, and they're going to try to get them into Flash. I've heard all sorts of crazy rumors about that.
Fingers crossed that we get Gal Gadot in the Flashpoint Wonder Woman costume and reflect on those events just for a little bit. Maybe I get to see my name in the credits. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So
very cool.
I guess I do have I'm a little biased because I'm definitely hoping that'll come to pass, because that would be really fun. So
I did want to mention we haven't talked about it at all. I don't know what your feelings are on it, or if you're that aware of the controversy that's been going on with Ray Fisher, who plays Cyborg.
Yeah, I'm aware of what's that
Twitter war going on with him, and this article does say he is going to be in the reshoots. So that's another interesting thing. It does say that Ray Fisher is participating in the reshoots for the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, I think the only thing that his ongoing war with Warner Brothers is going to affect, that I keep hearing, is that it may affect whether or not he has a cameo or any presence in the Flash movie, for example.
I actually heard a rumor that that's what started it all. Was that Ray Fisher?
Well, there you go.
Because he wasn't getting a big part in the Flash movie.
Yeah.
It's just a rumor. That's why I haven't really even touched the Ray Fisher controversy, because there's all sorts of rumors and accusations going back and forth. But I did think it's interesting that despite all that, they're saying that he is going to be doing the reshoots for Justice League.
Well, there you go. Interesting. Yeah, that whole thing is just, it's interesting how that's kind of unfolding. Curiouser and curiouser. Interesting. So for my next story I've got here real quick, if you wouldn't mind sharing my screen. This is actually coming from comicbook.com. We've covered this kind of before in a different form, but this is by Russ Burlingame, and this is actually published yesterday. And it says, Swamp Thing, the CW releases key art for the show's broadcast premiere. Like I said, we had covered this before, that basically Swamp Thing is making the leap from the DC Universe app, which will probably soon be no more, at least in its current form. My best understanding what's happening now is basically they have taken all, and this is a bit of a streaming wars segment thing, but just bear with me. They've basically taken all of the original content that they created for the DC Universe app, things like Doom Patrol, and I think even Stargirl, all that stuff, the Harley Quinn series, all those are making the move to HBO Max, right? And then the comics content is going to stay on there, still on a subscription-based form where people can still subscribe to it, and they're changing the name to something else. So the comics will still kind of exist there, but it's going to be in a very different form. But one of the big moves that's happening is they're taking Swamp Thing, and they're not just going to take Swamp Thing and just move him over to HBO Max. They're actually unrolling it, and they're actually going to put it on the CW, which I think is exciting, because the Swamp Thing was one of the things I enjoyed the most. It was on the DC Universe app. And this is like Cobra Kai. This is a fun way that more people can actually see and enjoy Swamp Thing, which I think will be a lot of fun. So basically, as the CW has provided comicbook.com with a first look at the key art for Swamp Thing, the short-lived DC Universe series that is making its way to the CW for a broadcast premiere amid the programming shortage created by the COVID-19 pandemic and its related production shutdowns. Where its original run, the DC Universe, spun its fantasy, horror, and romance approach to the DC Universe in the decidedly horror direction, the CW seems to have elected to play on the character's humanity in this series' romantic elements. Swamp Thing follows Abby Arcane as she investigates what seems to be a deadly swamp-borne virus in a small town in Louisiana, but soon discovers that the swamp holds mystical and terrifying secrets. When unexplainable and chilling horrors emerge from the murky marsh, no one is safe. And then here's the image here. This is Dark Water, Deep Secrets. We got a really cool image of the Swamp Thing. It's going to be premiering October 6th, 7, 8 Central on the CW. So October 6th, Tuesday. So that's kind of fun. So keep your eye out. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed the Swamp Thing series that was on the DC Universe. I'm a huge fan of the character. So, and my hopes is that this will lead to a season 2. That's what I hope. I hope that we'll get a second season and they will realize that this was a worthwhile investment and will continue to explore and learn more about the red and the green and all these fun elements that actually come from the Swamp Thing comics. So,
yeah, TT actually was asking. So we are getting a season 2 of Swamp Thing. That's the big question, right?
Yeah, well, fingers crossed that hopefully that we have a better chance of it now, TT, than we did before. Before there was no chance. I mean, I thought what was going to happen is it might make the move to HBO Max, or it may not even make the move to HBO Max. I thought there was a good chance they might just dump it. And if you bought a physical media copy of it, you'd have it. Like for example, a lot of people don't. Well, I think more people remember, so that's an oversimplification and maybe too much of a judgment call. But the Swamp Thing was a very long running show that actually ran in syndication, actually on a lot of different cable networks back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. That show ran I think like 4 seasons or something.
Yeah, I used to watch it.
Yeah, it was a fun show. So there's no reason that Swamp Thing can't have a similar kind of success on the CW.
I can guarantee that if it's a hit on the CW, they'll get a second season. It's all going to be about the viewership. They're not going to not continue the show if it's a hit. It's just going to be all based on the audience and the fans. They're going to decide this, I think. So,
yeah, and I think it has a greater chance of seeing more success because it's on a broadcast channel and more people can see it and champion it and support it and get behind it versus on the DC Universe app where hardly anyone was seeing it.
Yeah, TT had some insight. He says, I'm not a huge fan of the CW. It leans way too much on relationships and not something more important like saving the lives or the world. Interesting perspective there.
And I can see what you're saying, TT, but, I get the sense that you probably saw the first season of Swamp Thing. And I was just generally impressed with it. So my hope is that we would get more of that, that they would.
I have not seen this version of Swamp Thing. So my issue with the CW is I can't get it on my antenna anymore. I guess I could use the app, and maybe I should look into doing that. But a couple years ago, I stopped being able to receive my local CW station on the antenna in my living room. And I don't know what happened, if they changed repeaters. I know there's actually some stuff that happened where a lot of these stations, they actually sold their bandwidth to like cellular phone companies. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that happened. And as a result, a lot of these over-the-air television stations are now on much less powerful repeaters, on much more, basically they moved their frequencies. So I don't know if that's what happened to my local CW or what, but I can't get it. So that's why I don't really watch any of the CW shows.
Well, that's sounds like the kind of short-sighted decisions that an executive would make.
Exactly.
Kind of like killing Swamp Thing as fast as they did because they didn't get a rebate. I still think there's more to that story than what they said.
Yeah,
that they weren't going to do a second season because they didn't get a rebate. I can't. I don't know. Eric, you probably have a different opinion on that since you're a producer. Maybe that bears more weight and truth than I can understand from my standpoint. But it just sounded like smoke and like a smoke and cover for something else.
It's probably a factor, but it's probably not the whole story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's something that probably did weigh on the production and all that kind of stuff, because that can affect the budget significantly. But it's not the only reason, that they probably had things that, honestly, I'm just guessing they didn't get the reception they were hoping for. That's generally what happens. If they just don't get the viewership that they were hoping for, then these things go away. And speaking of that, unfortunately, I have some bad news that we were talking about off the air. This is a Variety article, and we were talking about season 2 of Swamp Thing, and whether we're going to get a season 2 of Swamp Thing. Well, we're not getting a season 2 of the Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. It says it's canceled after 1 season at Netflix, and that's a real bummer.
Yeah, that's a real travesty, because I felt like that Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance was the first kind of really totally fantastical world building, out of the box, magical kind of fantasy series that we had. It to me, it was the one that was the most unique, so that's a huge unfortunate, it's just it just makes you sad, because it's like, we did a huge in-depth review that you can actually listen to on the audio version of the show, which you can find over on Anchor or Spotify. But we did a 3-hour, I think, just all about Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance, and how much we loved it. And so I am greatly saddened to hear that they're not going to go beyond 1 season.
Yeah, I actually, one of my daughters really loves that show. And it was really got into it all on her own, just, watching Netflix in her room. And as TT says, yeah, it is a bummer. I haven't told her. I don't know if she's aware that they're not going to have a season 2. I actually put that off telling her. I don't know if she's found out on her own. But we actually went toy hunting, because we wanted to get the toys, and we actually had difficulty finding them, because they were kind of considered, I guess, a little bit of like a boutique item. They weren't they weren't necessarily like at Target or Walmart or places like that. So we had to go hunting, and we did. We eventually found all the figures, and I have the Hunter. That's the figure that I got, is the Hunter, and she got all the other ones. And so that's a good memory and everything. It just kind of sucks they're doing this. So I do know that there's a comic book series. In fact, my daughter has a couple of the issues, so at least maybe they'll continue the story in the comics.
Yeah, that's kind of the last refuge, and you never know if they can create. Well, no, I know it's laughable too, but at the same point, if they can create a truly,
that's the last refuge.
Yeah, but if they can create a truly memorable, interesting story that sticks, that really captures people's imaginations in a way in which they currently can't measure with metrics that they feel like they need to be able to measure, then there is the possibility. And you never know. Maybe some super fans will be the ones that bring it back. I mean, look at Cobra Kai. I mean, Cobra Kai is basically produced by 2 Karate Kid super fans, that just love the material. They understand the material. They had a really great idea. And look at how great Cobra Kai is. So, maybe this isn't necessarily the end for the Dark Crystal. Maybe it's just going to take some super fans to do something truly amazing with it and bring it back, and maybe eventually finish the story.
Yeah, the one good thing is that because Age of Resistance is a prequel, we already do have the end of the story. We just don't have the middle. You know what I mean? So
right.
It's a prequel series, so we do have the end of the story. We just don't have what happened in between, which would have been fun. And it's a shame that it's not coming back. TT mentioned, now the only fantastical show to look forward to is the Lord of the Rings show on Amazon Prime next year, and rumors on that have been sketchy. We haven't really talked about that, have we, Dave? The up and coming Lord of the Rings TV show on Amazon Prime.
No, we haven't talked about it too much. I love really good fantasy stuff. I've always been kind of surprised that no one's ever been able to take kind of D&D, you know what I mean, beyond like the classic cartoon series. And I'm kind of surprised too that
I really wish they would do a live action version of that Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, because that was like a big part of my childhood. I watched that show a bazillion times. I mean, there's not that many episodes, and I watched that every Saturday morning as a kid.
I loved it. My wife loved it. I actually own that. Several years ago, they actually released those on DVD, and so I bought the physical media, like the box set of all those episodes, and they're still really great and fun, and they're just so imaginative and it's just interesting what they do with sort of like the power sets, between the different characters, like what their skills and abilities are is so cool and interesting. And I've always been shocked and amazed that they've never been able to take that and do anything else with it. Like it's
Yeah.
just, it's like, how do you, and that would be something that would be fun too, that could kind of exist kind of in between, because if you do it the right way, it helps to kind of click, because I think the superhero fans that enjoy that kind of stuff might be able to buy into it, because you kind of have characters with powers, right? Or powerful abilities because of their weapons they have. But on the flip side, you get all the fun, fantastical, sort of D&D world building and stuff, that's some people be more familiar with it because of things like Lord of the Rings and maybe even Dark Crystal. Like, it sits in this really interesting place where it could kind of play to both audiences if you do it the right way. And we'll see. TT, I'm curious about the Lord of the Rings series that Amazon's doing, because a lot of the Amazon productions are usually really, really well done, and their quality. Like The Boys is really good. I don't think The Boys is everybody's cup of tea, but my wife and I have been making our way through season 2 of The Boys, and really enjoying that. So Amazon's perfectly capable of putting together a really great production. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I've heard Neurotic talk about the Lord of the Rings TV show a little bit, and I know he's had some concerns about it, about what direction they're going and all that stuff. So who knows? I really don't have any really good insight into that. I hope it's good. I mean, I don't really have Amazon Prime right now, but I might get it for Lord of the Rings. I wouldn't get it for The Boys, I'll tell you that. I mean, not to say I haven't seen it, but it's not something that has elicited my interest enough where I'm like, oh, I'm going to get Amazon Prime so I can watch The Boys.
Well, and we have Amazon Prime for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Right.
It's just we've been enjoying The Boys. It's it's definitely.
What gets me about it is that I keep hearing people always marketing it as, oh, this is like this very unique and different take on superheroes. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, well, from what I see, no, it's not. You're just basically taking supervillains and calling them superheroes. That's the issue I have with it, as far as, not
Yeah,
really because I'm like, it's not revolutionary. You're just basically taking characters that normally would have been villains, and now you're just calling them the heroes.
well, and it's to me, it reminds me of Thunderbolts, the Marvel series, the Thunderbolts, where you had villains. You basically had I think it was the masters of whatever that were like the Avengers villains that posing as heroes. But there's a lot of rumors swirling around that's actually probably what we'll be getting in Phase 4. Because a lot is happening with the release schedule, things are having to change, because apparently originally they wanted to do Falcon and Winter Soldier first on Disney Plus, but they can't now because you have to see Black Widow before you see that. Like it's too disjointed. Because of how the story elements are connected. That apparently that's why we're going to get WandaVision first, is because that one you can see kind of more out of step with the others, and you're not going to, you know what I mean? You're not going to be missing as many pieces, or it's not necessarily going to be giving away something prematurely.
That makes sense.
So,
I can see that concern and that problem. That happens with a lot of franchises. They have to be concerned about what they're showing in a television show because it might contradict something that they're doing in the movies. That's one of the problems with these big universes, where it's different than what DC typically does, where they're really not connected to each other, so it doesn't matter. But when you have these big things like the MCU and it is all connected, it can have repercussions. TT mentioned that in terms of when I was talking about The Boys, it says that they just look like the usual anti-heroes to me. Venom is my prime example. So I kind of see that as well. You know, it's kind of like, I guess what I don't like is the marketing that they try to make like the boys is supposed to be so revolutionary. And I'm like, no, it's not really. It's just hype to me, you know?
Well, for me, I've just been enjoying the stories because I didn't read the boys comics when they originally came out. So they're kind of new and fresh, kind of the stories are to me. And I've just been enjoying them for what they are. But all I was just going to say is that it is very much that kind of idea. It is the villains kind of posing as heroes to an extent. Um, but no, I just find it really interesting because if the rumors about what they're doing in Phase 4 turns out to actually be true, if we are essentially going to do Marvel's version of the Thunderbolts, like a different movie, MCU version of that, then if DC isn't careful, Marvel's going to beat them to the punchline again because they're going to have the superhero team versus the supervillain team. Because I feel like that's the one thing we haven't done yet in these movies. We haven't just had a full-on, Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. Like we haven't had that yet.
Of Justice League is alluding to is that's exactly what was going to happen, and then of course it kind of stalled. That after credit scene that they have that meeting. I think Deathstroke and Lex Luthor, and they're obviously forming the Legion of Doom, which I think would have been awesome. I love the Legion of Doom. I think the Legion of Doom is they totally need to bring back because I love that. I used to love the Super Friends. Getting back to the Tolkien series, the Lord of the Rings series, TT mentioned that he said a few weeks ago Amazon fired all the writers that made season 1. He says even the writers that were huge Tolkien lore masters apparently were fired. And I did hear something about that there was a big shakeup with the writers' room for the Lord of the Rings series. That's why some people are really concerned about what's going on there.
Huh. And just to call it out, Terry Silver is apparently in the room.
All right.
Hola. I think actually the genuine owner of Cobra Kai, Terry Silver, is in the house. So there you go.
Financier of Cobra Kai.
Now we need his Bad Boy Barnes and we'll be set. So there you go.
Now we were talking about Wanda Vision earlier, and we had mentioned that we were going to go ahead and take a look at the trailer because I haven't seen it. So I'm going to bring it up. Because you were talking about WandaVision, and this is a legit for me. This is a legit trailer reaction because I have not seen this trailer yet. Have you seen it yet, Dave?
I have seen it. I've actually watched it several times because I was genuinely curious about some different things, and I've seen some like rumor stuff and whatever about it too. So it's going to be interesting. Unfortunately, though, because you have to play it without sound, I feel like you're going to miss the really big moment.
I have the sound on for me. Unfortunately, our viewers won't get the sound, but I do have the sound on for me. So
okay, good. So you can hear it. Okay.
I apologize to our viewers that don't get the sound, but we've mentioned before we have all sorts of issues, like pretty much every streaming a show out there. We have all sorts of issues with music. We just don't get away with anything. So I'm going to go ahead and start playing this.
And to take that even further, we actually got some guidance actually from Facebook that they're actually going to be cracking down on it as well. So unfortunately, we can't play the sound. But this has obviously got the classic sitcom intro opening kind of thing. It's got elements of like Bewitched, I feel like the most. A little bit of I Love Lucy too.
The lady from the 70s show?
Yeah. This is the first inklings in the trailer that something's not right.
That seems like perfect casting, by the way.
Yeah.
Lady from the 70s show being that sitcom mom.
Right. And here are the changes. They get color. They're going.
A lot of people have been talking about this. It's hard to catch. There you go. A lot of people have been talking about that. I did hear about this, that you got to finally get to see her in her actual outfit, which a lot of times you don't get that in the live action versions of these characters. You never get the original outfit. I know a lot of people are really excited about that.
Yeah. Well, she's not the only one. Kind of a Superman-ish kind of moment there with the Vision. And for those of you who haven't seen it, this is the big turning point in the trailer. Because he kind of asks her, he's like, hey, I thought something was wrong with you. And then he says, and she's like, oh, no, there's nothing's wrong with me. You're dead.
I like that. That's cool.
There's the classic Vision costume.
Yeah,
It's obviously a Halloween kind of thing. And then apparently that's Monica Rambeau. They called her Photon, but when I was a kid growing up, she was actually Captain Marvel.
So this looks like it's going to be a very different kind of show. It's going to be really weird, you know? I think a lot of people are really kind of wondering how this is all happening. And of course, my understanding is this is after the events of Endgame, so Vision is dead. So it's kind of interesting to see him back. I like that character. I thought he was a pretty cool character in the MCU. So I'm happy to see him back. I just it looks interesting to me. I just don't know exactly what this show is going to be. You know.
Well, that's kind of the thing, because they've kind of alluded to the fact that WandaVision is going to somehow tie into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Like these things are going to be interconnected in some manner. And I know there's all kinds of speculation and different videos on YouTube that you can watch that probably delve further into that. I haven't gotten too far into that because I just kind of like to enjoy and experience the stuff as it comes out, you know. And then as we get closer to something actually happening, then I'll actually start kind of scouring the rumor mills and seeing what people are saying about things a little bit more directly and intensely. And we did have a lot of interesting Marvel news besides just this trailer. We got a casting announcement actually for She-Hulk, which is the actress who was actually from Orphan Black, which is a show my wife and I watched. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So we'll see how they're going to pull that off, and how it's all going to be connected to the MCU, you know. And we know it's all connected to the MCU because they've literally had to shift their release slate, even of the Disney Plus shows around, because basically they can't get the films into theaters.
Right. Yeah. So the good news is that WandaVision is going to be coming out in December. So for those of you that are starved for MCU content, at least you have something to look forward to. TT mentioned that the sitcom intro is very much like the limited edition Wand and Vision comic. Are you familiar with that one, Dave?
Are we talking about the original one from way back? Because I actually read the 12-issue maxi series that actually came back way back in the day. I haven't read any of the newer stuff. I think the newer one was definitely much more, that kind of idea. Oh, they both might be, to be honest. But it was them trying. They moved in this town. They were trying to build a life together. They had the twins, and so it was this idea that they were, building sort of like that sitcom American Dream, white picket fence kind of a life, right? At least in the 12-issue maxi series that I read back in the day.
TT says it's the Wanda and Vision comic from the 80s. Is that
okay? One? Then we're talking about the exact same one. I know exactly the one you're talking about. That's why I said if you're talking about that one, yes, I did read it, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And I could totally see that. I saw that immediately, actually, from the trailer too. This interesting comment too. TT also says, to me, Carol Danvers was Miss Marvel and Rambeau was Captain Marvel. I think that's how it was in the comics. Yes, you are correct, sir. Monica Rambeau. When I was young and I was playing the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game, anyone out there who used to play that game, our Captain Marvel was Monica Rambeau. I actually went out and actually got the first issue special that had her origin in it, just because I wanted to learn more about her character. She was Captain Marvel when I played the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game. I actually battled her at one point. So someone else was playing her, and I actually had to battle her because she had been taken over some kind of a mind control thing by oh darn it, is it I can't remember his name. He's the X-Men villain who could take over people's minds, and I can't remember his name. Shoot. He actually brainwashed all the X-Men at one point too. I can't remember his name. Anyhow, I can't remember his name, but he was, yeah.
Either.
Yeah, but anyhow, yeah. I actually had to battle her, but I battled her as Captain America because that was my character that I played with. But my Captain America had a robotic arm, actually like Winter Soldier. This is long before any of this Winter Soldier stuff ever happened. But the way Captain America in our game lost it was in the first module you play, there's this scenario where you're strung up like you're going to be torn to the four winds, and on the other end is the Thing, and the Thing has Captain America's catapult shield and like a giant catapult slingshot kind of a thing. And depending upon how the die roll turns out, depends upon how you escape, right? Well, my friends and I, we've been modifying it to make it a little bit more realistic and a little bit more difficult. And so my Captain America escaped, but I didn't get the other arm all of the way out. And so my Captain America lost his left arm actually to his shield. The shield actually severed his arm off. And so Tony Stark actually built him a robotic shield and actually upped my character's abilities because he actually got more strong. He got stronger because he had like basically it was like Captain America with the Bionic Man's arm. And so that was the character I used to play in Marvel superheroes role playing game. So, but yeah, I actually fought Captain Marvel with that version of Cap, and I defeated her. Even though I shouldn't have been able to. So it was fun.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah. And he mentions Carol Danvers fought Rogue. And that was how Rogue gained the ability to fly and invulnerability. She touched Miss Marvel for too long and gained her powers permanently.
Yep, that's true. And that's also how she developed her weird split personality, too. Because she had Carol Danvers actually trapped inside her as well. I'm hoping we'll get to see all that with the new MCU and how everything's interconnected, and the fact that we have Captain Marvel in the MCU means that there's the chance that, you know, whoever they cast to play Rogue could actually have that encounter, you know, nearly kill Captain Marvel and take the powers out of her, and then we'll have a properly, you know, Southern Belle speaking powered Rogue. That would be awesome to have the classic version of Rogue in a couple movies. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that would be fun to have Rogue back. That would be a lot of fun. I've always liked that character, especially the incarnation in the 90s X-Men cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
But I will say, my Captain Marvel is always going to be what now people call Shazam.
That's yeah. I know.
The original.
Yeah. So, and I'm a big, of course, fan of the Big Red Cheese as well. So
there you go. Go.
Originally called Captain Thunder back in the day.
Oh, I didn't know that. I did not.
Yeah, the original Ashcan, the original test book that they actually published for Captain Marvel, the original version, he was actually called Captain Thunder. That's why in the when they did Flashpoint, he was actually called Captain Thunder, actually in the Flashpoint series. They were hearkening back to that original name that they used for him. And I think they also called him Captain Thunder 2 when they had a Captain Marvel-like character that actually fought Superman way back in the day before DC had the rights. I think Superman actually fought Captain Thunder back then too, but it was basically Captain Marvel. Everybody knew who it was supposed to be. So
interesting. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So cool. Are we good to move over into maybe streaming wars? Do you have anything else for pop culture? Or
one more. I actually have a couple more, but I'm just going to do the one because I don't want to, go too long on time. But this is a really big deal, I think, a really, really big deal. We've been talking about multiple times that we want to cover a little bit more of like video game news and things like that to see if we can maybe get our Twitch numbers up a little bit. And this is from CNBC, and the headline reads, Microsoft buys Bethesda, maker of hit Fallout and the Elder Scrolls games, in $7.5 billion deal. So this is some interesting news. I myself am a fan of the Fallout series. I own Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout, that'd be Fallout 4, right? I own those. I haven't got into Fallout 76. That just didn't interest me. The whole multiplayer thing just didn't interest me. That's just not interested. But I'm a big fan of that franchise, and this is pretty big. Fallout is a huge franchise in gaming. Elder Scrolls is a huge franchise in gaming. Bethesda is a huge name in the gaming industry. And of course, what a lot of people are wondering, especially people like me who play on a PlayStation and are Sony folks, there's a lot of speculation about the future of these franchises, and if we're looking at them possibly being Xbox exclusives. Now, this is not unprecedented. Folks might be familiar that Microsoft does own Mojang, which is the creator of Minecraft, which is probably one of the biggest games in the world. It seems like everybody plays that game. At least every kid plays that game. But they do still release Minecraft on other platforms. So there is hope, but there's also concern. People like me that own Sony that we're not going to be able to get these games anymore, or eventually, because of this deal.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. As some of our long-term viewers know, I don't play a lot of video games, so I'm pretty much out of the loop here. But from a business standpoint and everything, I could see where they're trying to, just like with the streaming services, if you think of it that way, purchasing this really popular content in order to drive people, or in some cases force people to migrate over to other platforms that normally they wouldn't necessarily use.
And, TT has a really interesting comment. I didn't even think about this, but he's like, who would have thought that a game company would sell for nearly twice the amount of what Lucasfilm sold for? Think about that. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, but think about this. What's one of the first things that happened when they migrated Lucasfilm over to Disney? They dismantled their game division and got rid of it.
Which they made some great games. LucasArts, awesome games that I owned over the years and things like that. They made some awesome games at LucasArts.
Yeah,
we talked about that's also seems to be the rumor what's going to happen to Warner Brothers games. That Warner Brothers, AT&T wants to get out of the game business, and that's another huge franchise which is that I've been playing. I recently actually finished The Witcher 3. And that's Warner Brothers games, and there's all sorts of rumors that AT&T is going to get rid of Warner Brothers games. So it's interesting. It really is. It's like mixed messages, huh? $7.5 billion for Bethesda, and as TT mentions, Microsoft seems to be making moves in the game industry. They definitely are. And he also mentioned that was a huge mistake. LucasArts was one of the best game studios on the planet to me. And that's exactly what I was saying, TT. I totally agree with you that they made some awesome games at LucasArts.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about it because it's part of the reason that, for example, like we had the Mortal Kombat versus DC game, and we've had some of the other things that we've had in relation to the Mortal Kombat franchise is because unless my memory is faulty, I think Warner Brothers actually owns
that's a Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers division.
It's just so crazy to think that it's like, we don't need our games division. All these other companies, they're trying to find ways. That's the thing I always think is funny. Like, certain companies trying to find their way into games, and other companies can't wait to get out.
Yeah, it's weird.
So, yeah,
it's definitely
strange.
It's very strange to me. It's very strange to me. I just hope that they don't make these the Fallout games into Xbox exclusives. That's the thing I'm worried about.
Well, I guess we'll see. We'll just have to see what happens. So 10 billion years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth and the Xbox was brand new, we were in negotiations actually to license Star Gods for a game for the Xbox.
Oh, really?
10 billion years ago. Like I said, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Didn't come to pass. But, Star Gods and Conquest Studios right there on the edge of greatness. And then suddenly overnight, just poof, it was gone.
Just
crazy.
Poof.
Yeah, literally.
That happens.
Two bad contract breaking deals, and it was over. Just as fast as it began, it seemed like. Actually, faster than it began. It was over with really quick. So, yeah, crazy. So are we good to segue over into streaming wars, do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right, very cool. So if you wouldn't mind just putting up the graphic real quick, I'll set it up. Oh, I don't have the graphic up on my side. Hold on.
There we go.
Fine. Oh, there you go. Cool. Yeah, I was kind of counting on you to do it, unfortunately, because you're faster than I am. So here in the Streaming Wars segment, we're going to talk about anything that's happening in the world of streaming. You may be asking yourself, what do you mean by streaming? Do you mean like water, like fishing streams, like bass fishing? No, that's not what we mean. We're actually talking about live streaming video. Specifically, we're talking about these live streaming videos or these streaming video services that a lot of us enjoy. Things such as Hulu, things such as Netflix, things that we don't even talk about very much anymore, like Apple Plus or Peacock, or a lot of these other really great free services that we've talked about here on the show in the past, things like Pluto, for example, or even Crackle. All these really great streaming video services that provide all this amazing content, sometimes ad supported, sometimes not, that we can all enjoy. That's what we mean by streaming wars. So tell me, Eric, what do you have up first here in this segment of the streaming wars?
This is kind of a small story. It's kind of a minor one, but I did think it was significant enough to talk about because I've talked about this before. And specifically what I've talked about before is that HBO Max and Peacock did not have a deal with Roku. So what we have here is an article from The Verge, and the headline reads, Roku and Comcast reach agreement to carry Peacock on Roku after months of negotiations between Comcast and Roku. So this is a win for the Peacock. I've actually been using the Peacock a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of it simply because it's not working very well. I use it on my PlayStation 4. I have the app, the Peacock app on that. And then I also have it on my phone, and I can use my Chromecast to cast it. Now, to give Peacock some credit, initially, when Peacock first came out, you could not use a first-generation Chromecast with the Peacock app. I don't know why they did that. It's really stupid, but they fixed that. So I can report that my Chromecast, I have a first-generation Chromecast. I can now use it to watch Peacock, and I often do. And then I also watch it on, as I mentioned, on my PlayStation 4. But it's not that smooth. I do have issues where it seems to hiccup quite a bit. Dave, you've mentioned on some of the other platforms, you've had issues where like the ads will screw things up. I see that happen a lot on Peacock where the ads kind of screw up the feed. So they're not out of the woods yet, but this is definitely a good move on their part. I think that they reached an agreement with Roku so that now they can stream on all those smart TVs and things like that Roku offers.
Yeah, well, that sounds cool. And it's one of those things. It's like you would thought they would have had this worked out before they launched, but things happen.
And as far as I know, still doesn't have a deal with Roku.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I'm still having issues with sort of like ads. They seem to cause all kinds of weird buffer problems and stream issues. For me, the biggest culprit, though, is still CBS All Access, soon to be called Paramount Plus. That's where I've had most of my problems, to the point that, and I've noticed the older content is kind of the worst. It's really weird. Like you'll be watching like original Star Trek or something, and it'll stop trying to play ads altogether, and that's usually when you're kind of at your best place, because then it just kind of goes from one commercial break right into the other, and you just kind of keep, you just watch the show kind of like as if you were on Netflix, for example. But then when they try to put those commercials back in, I've noticed it's the older shows that are the biggest culprits. Those are the ones where it tries to load something and it spins, and then there's just some kind of interruption in service, and then boom, it's gone. And you're like, wow, great. It just, took me all the way out, or it freezes and I have to restart, or it's pretty bad. And I'm kind of surprised that they haven't really made more efforts to kind of fix that. I'm hoping that with the Paramount Plus, in addition to the rebranding and everything else they're doing, they'll take a look at the engine on the back end and get that figured out so that it's a little bit more robust, because I never had those kind of issues with Netflix. So
They also need to get, as I've mentioned, they need to get the movie tab to work on the PlayStation app, because right now, if you have CBS All Access, you're playing it on your PlayStation. You can't get any of the movies. All that great Paramount content is unavailable, which is complete and utter crap. Have you actually used Peacock at all, Dave?
Yeah, I have, because we've reviewed some stuff here actually on the show too, that was on Peacock, I think, at one point. And yeah, I have used it. So yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was kind of into it for a little bit, and then I kind of got out of it and never really bothered to go back, to be honest. So
Peacock is one of those services that I want to promote. I've always wanted to promote simply because it does have that free tier, and anything that's free, I'd like to promote. So I've actually been using it to watch Unsolved Mysteries. I've been watching a lot of old Unsolved Mysteries on Peacock.
We've talked about before that we thought it might be fun to do something with Unsolved Mysteries, and that may still be coming in the future. So
we got season 1.5 coming up on Netflix in October. So we talked about that. So that's something to be on the lookout for. We might change things up on the Retro Rogues Live, at least for one episode, where we actually talk about the new Unsolved Mysteries episodes that are coming out in October. So stay tuned for that. TT mentions that says internet connection here is not that great. He says you might test out Elon Musk's new satellite internet service. Are you familiar with that, Dave? Elon Musk's satellite service?
No, I am not.
Yeah, he's doing a thing. I believe it's called Starlink. You can correct me, TT, if I use the wrong one. But basically, it's a satellite internet system that's meant for rural areas primarily. That's how it's being marketed. But eventually, they hope to be like a competitor with all the big internet providers. So, like, I use CenturyLink, I use DSL, and I use CenturyLink where I'm at. But apparently, at some point, Elon Musk hopes that he will be everywhere with his satellite system, and you will be able to have satellite internet as a legitimate alternative to DSL or cable.
Well, that's interesting. Huh. Very cool.
They're doing a beta right now. I think they have like 500 satellites or something, which is like not even the tip of where they plan to be. And there's certain places where you can beta test it, the system.
Huh. Well, that's very interesting. Huh.
And then he said it is called Starlink. And Jane mentions, have you heard of Sling? And yes, I have heard of Sling. And I actually dated a girl who used Sling, but I've never used it myself, other than the context of visiting that friend who had it. But I know that is another way that people get a lot of their streaming content and stuff like that, just with Sling.
Interesting. Well, there you go. Very cool. My streaming horror story, if you don't mind sharing my screen, is kind of more content driven. This is actually coming from Deadline, and this actually comes from today. It was reported today. So this is from a story by Peter White. This is the Suicide Squad TV spinoff Peacemaker, starring John Cena, from James Gunn, ordered by HBO Max. So I am a fan of the Peacemaker character. I'm curious to see exactly what they're going to do with the character here with James Gunn's Suicide Squad, but we'll read just a little bit of this here real quickly. HBO Max has called in the Peacemaker, ordering a TV spinoff of James Gunn's upcoming Suicide Squad movie starring John Cena. The streamer has landed Peacemaker, an 8-episode straight-to-series order for its first season, with Suicide Squad director writing all episodes and directing a number of them. The show will explore the origins of the character that Cena plays in the 2021 movie. It marks the latest major DC Comics original on HBO Max. Comes after the service revealed it was making a spin-off of Matt Reeves' upcoming Batman film. DC Universe originals such as Doom Patrol, Harley Quinn, Titans, Swamp Thing, Stargirl, and Young Justice also recently moved to the nascent digital service. So obviously you can learn more about that over here on Deadline, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. This is a very unusual character. I'm a huge fan of all the Charlton era characters. These are characters that kind of emerged from a competitor between the big two called Charlton Comics. A lot of these characters emerged in the 60s. So Charlton is the originator of characters such as Captain Atom, The Question, Blue Beetle, Peacemaker, Judo Master, another character I like that's so horribly irrelevant now, but I still think is a great character. Characters like Sarge Steel, and a lot of these characters actually did, from time to time, wind up in the Suicide Squad. But Peacemaker is a very unusual choice of a character to actually explore. So I'm really curious what it is that James Gunn has planned for the character in the movie and how that would relate, to a Peacemaker, like digital, streamer first series. I'm really curious about, what they're actually intending to do with that. So it should be interesting. I feel like sometimes they make announcements like this is fun and interesting, but I'm still shocked. It's like, well, if you're going to pick Charlton characters to do something with, where's Captain Atom? Where's Blue Beetle? Where's The Question? Those are your major, The Question would make a really great, crime mystery series, and you could do it very gritty. You could shoot it on, city lots with, kind of fog and shoot some stuff at night, hire a great martial arts choreography team. And, you could do just a really fun, almost sort of like throwback series, kind of like, Rockford Files, but with martial arts, as a heavy component, you know what I mean? If you could imagine such a thing. So I feel like that they're still kind of missing the thing to do, right? That I think people would love, but I'm very curious to see what they have planned to do with the Peacemaker. So had you heard about this, Eric?
No, I hadn't. This is the first I heard of it, but I think this has much more to do with John Cena than the Peacemaker.
Oh, okay.
I think they want to give John Cena a show, and it kind of makes sense to use the character that he's playing anyway. When I first heard that John Cena was in Suicide Squad, I didn't understand who the character was. I don't think initially they even said what character he was going to play. That came out of, I think, DC Fandom. I think I'm correct about that. And I was a little surprised because I am not familiar with this character, and so I was like, oh, so that's a character he's going to play. And so I did a little bit of research on it and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people kind of compare him to Captain America and say he's kind of a Captain America ripoff. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, the Peacemaker's
even John Cena said on those lines.
Yeah, so. I think that's the approach they're taking with the character. But I don't know if I would necessarily make the same immediate connect, because he's not really the same kind of character in my mind. Because the Peacemaker, was very much a pacifist and was kind of more diplomatic than I think a lot of, originally everything he used was like non-lethal weapons. Right. He's a very
right, but he believes in making peace. Not what I mean.
Right.
That's my understanding. He believes in forcing people to have peace. But at the same time, he uses non-weapons.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. The approach they're going to take in Suicide Squad in order to contemporize this character is going to be radically different from, I think, the character that we've seen in the comics. I think it'll have a connection to it, but I do think it'll be pretty different. Because I remember we were watching the DC Fandom, and then when I saw someone was running around dressed like the Peacemaker, I was like, the Peacemaker? Well, that's random and weird, and then when they because I kept seeing in the press too, they kept saying, well, he's kind of like Captain America. I'm like, no, he's not really, Cap is just unless they're going to do the whole man out of time idea, where he's been frozen or in suspended animation, or he's been teleported from the 60s when the Peacemaker was super relevant, right? When he was originally created, he's just been zoomed into the modern day, and that would explain why his suit's so outlandish and why he's so kind of out of touch. You know, if they want to do the man at a time idea, then yeah, you could make him kind of like Captain America. But at first blush, the Peacemaker, it was as much about his weapons as anything else. You know, his jetpack and stuff. So, and Cap doesn't have a jetpack. You know, so I'm just saying, I hear what they're saying, but I think that's just the approach that they're taking. I think that's how they're going to contemporize him. You know, they're going to try to look at him as Chris Evans, quote unquote, Captain America, in order to make him into something that American audiences, or worldwide audiences, I guess is a better way to put it, can understand and accept. You know, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I just thought it was interesting they were making the series. I was like, wow, okay, all right, well, I'll watch that. You know, but again, like I said, I feel like the really popular characters that definitely have a lot of potential that come from the Charlton catalog. You know, Question in my mind being up there, along with Blue Beetle, which probably has the biggest cash in name recognition. You know, those are the ones I think that they should be looking to develop. You know, Question would have fit into James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie, especially the Justice League Unlimited version, the super paranoid, you know, conspiracy theorist. I could see James Gunn having a lot of fun with that and doing a really killer series out of it. So, but tonally, it'd have more in connection with probably, you know, Matt Reeves' Batman movie, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It is like I said, I'm not even familiar with this character, but I do think that it's more about giving John Cena a vehicle.
Yeah, I could see that,
and I can totally.
I hadn't considered that, but after you said that makes so much sense. That it's more about a vehicle for John Cena, you know, than anything else. And it's a character, in all honesty, most people don't have a huge attachment to. So if they do something a little radically different, I don't think anyone's going to be too terribly upset. I don't know any diehard Peacemaker fans who's like, well, the Peacemaker would never do that. I mean, I know there's some, but I can't imagine there's that many, you know. So,
well, along those lines, TT had a pretty relevant comment. He said, I can overlook some changes as long as it's a good story. And I agree with that. You know, I do sometimes get into my canon, you know, dogma kind of thing, because I am a canon guy, you know, and especially with like Star Trek, I can get pretty crazy about it. I'm willing to admit that. I can get pretty crazy about it to the point that I'm just like, I can't accept this show at, you know, period at all. But I don't know anything about the Peacemaker. So, you know, it's like,
yeah,
it really mattered to me. But at the same time, there's all sorts of adaptations of characters that I'm familiar with where I thought they did a different version of this character for television or for the screen. I understand it's not exactly like the comic book that I grew up on. You know what I mean? I get that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it all comes down to writing. You know, it's all about good writing. If it's a good story and it's good writing, you can accept those changes. If it's not, no, you know, it's not going to work. It's like adding insult to injury.
Yep. There you go. And then we have another comment here by TT. He says, can you have the Question in the Suicide Squad without revealing who he is? Well, I mean, in all honesty, I think you could do it both ways. I think you could do a story where the Question is never really revealed, you know, to be who he is. Now, I don't know if you mean in terms of like revealed as to who he is, like he's in the background and no one knows he's even there tracking their movements, and you know that he has that he's investigating them or curious about them, you know, or along those same lines, even if you mean just the fact that, you know, the Question is, you know, Vic Sage, you know, like if there's a way to, you know, not necessarily reveal that, because that's the thing. It's like, because, you know, Vic Sage is like a reporter, you know, there's a couple of different angles you could play that where they never really realize, you know, at the end of the day, kind of who he is. It depends upon the role he would play in the film. If he's part of the Suicide Squad and they've got him in prison, obviously they know who he is, you know. But if he's a conspiracy theorist nut who's trying to prove that the suicide exists, like Jack McGee and the Hulk, and he's trailing them and tracking them, and then he dons his question persona and then helps them over the course of a mission, and then they never realize who was that faceless man, you know what I mean, that kind of idea, then they wouldn't necessarily know in that context, you know.
No, that
So
makes a lot of sense. Like, you know,
yeah,
the way you're describing it, if he's obsessed with conspiracy theories, it would kind of make sense that he's sort of investigating the Suicide Squad, that I assume would be very secretive, right? So that he's trying to figure out what they're all about, maybe expose them, whatever it is. But you know, that seems like that would make a lot of sense. That'd be a great way to tie him in.
right. And then TT says, you mean as in who his identity was before he became the question. I see what you're saying. I see what you did there. I think it's all about approach. It's all about how he fits into the story and how the story works best. I like the idea of the Jack McGee, he's trying to prove the Suicide Squad exists kind of idea, you know, and kind of how that kind of unfolds, you know, and then you can work into if was he connected to them before and his identity before he became the question, you know. You know, that's at the end of the day, it should all be story driven, and that's the thing. The question is such a great character. There's so many different ways to approach it that it would still work, you know. I mean, there's still a lot of gas just taking the idea that he's like in prison, you know, and maybe he was, you know, sort of Guantanamo Bay, you know, Snowden kind of thing, and he revealed something he wasn't supposed to reveal, and that's why they have him in there, you know. And then you could almost do the thing where he's like the question. He won't admit he's Vic Sage. He is just the question, you know, that whole, you know, where's my face? Give me my face. You know, you could you lean into the Rorschach idea of the character a little bit more too, if you wanted, where he won't even acknowledge that he was ever Vic Sage. He is only the question, you know.
I like that.
So that's the thing. That character is so great. So you could do all kinds of stuff.
Free ideas you're giving to Warner Media right now.
Oh, they'll never use them. But, I mean, I pitched a great, you know, my mind anyway. You know, Scott Clark and we put together a really great pitch for Wildcats. We thought was really kind of fun, and you know, they passed on that. So I'm not going to take any of my random theories, use any of them. We could take them though and create our own version of it, though, Eric, and do something ourselves. So
yeah, I can do that too. But TT was saying maybe we should be writers, and TT, we do some writing. Dave and I have done some writing, you know, over the course of many years and things like that. But we also do a segment from time to time on the show called the Rogues Writers Room, where we actually will take usually shows that we didn't like or something like that, and we try to change them into different versions of the show. Like we try to do our own little roundtable here on the show with the Rogues Gallery participating, and Dave and I going back and forth as the showrunner and as the writer, you know, kind of pitching ideas and things like that. We actually have done that segment from time to time on this show, where we actually try to do that, and it's fun. It can be fun to do that. Just listening to your ideas, Dave. You got some really good ideas there, you know. So,
well, like I said, I love the character of the question, and he's been interpreted so many different ways. They're still always true to the character, but they're just different approaches. I'm more a fan of the Vic Sage, you know, version of the question than necessarily the later Montoya character from the Batman the Animated Series version, where they turned her into the question. I prefer the original Vic Sage version.
I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, they did. Montoya at one point was the new question after Vic Sage had apparently died. But you know, you look at the work of Denny O'Neil in the Question series, and it's so great, and that character is so multifaceted. And then you look at what the writing staff did with him in Justice League Unlimited, much more closer to Rorschach and Watchmen, but still really great and interesting. that episode, that double date episode where it's him and Huntress kind of squaring off against Black Canary and Green Arrow is so awesome. I love that episode. And then you go over and you look at, I think it was Greg Rucka, what Greg Rucka did with Rick Burchett when they did the Huntress miniseries, and they brought the question into that. That was such a great, again, interpretation of the question. He performed a different function in that. Kind of was more of a sensei, which is an interesting approach for that character too, And that's the thing. The question can be anythings and all things, because at the end of the day, that's what he is. He's a question. He's a man searching for answers, and how do you interpret that in a modern context within a modern world? There's so much room for exploration. It's just such a great idea, which is why I'm shocked that they're not doing more with it.
Yeah. Well, you've actually worked for DC, so you probably have a little bit more insight into that stuff than a lot of us do. So as to why that happens.
Oh, and that's its own multifaceted answer. So for sure. So
hey, James is taking off. So hey, James, it was good to have you back. Says night, guys. Thanks again. Thank you for tuning in. We missed you, so we're glad that you were here.
Awesome. Good night, James. Glad to see you back. Do you have anything else for Streaming Wars, Eric?
Nope, that's it. I usually just do one Streaming War story. So
okay, well, there you go. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for this episode. So I guess I'll just go ahead and I'll do the outro. So
sounds good.
I want to thank you for watching, or hopefully listening to, at the very least, this episode of Retro Rogues Live. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I have been one of your hosts. You can see a lot of the t-shirt designs I've been doing, and maybe even possibly buy a Retro Rogues t-shirt for yourself. Help support what we're doing over here on Retro Rogues Live. You can do that over at kirbytees.com. That's KIRBYTS.com. Thank you in advance for your support. I want to thank my co-host, Mr. Eric Alexander, for being here on the show, providing his own unique wisdom and perspective on all these fun topics that we've been talking about this evening. Please, Eric, tell the folks, hopefully watching or listening at home, where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter, and that's at BaseGod14, at BASSGOD14. My DMs are always open. If you have show suggestions, you can always make comments, on any one of our platforms where we have the show, or you can direct message me on Twitter. BaseGod14 is also the official Twitch and also the official YouTube for the Retro Rogues Live. So if you want to check us out on some of those other platforms, you can do that as well. And I wanted to go back a little ways in the Rogues Gallery comments, and TT had said, I'm right there with you on Star Trek in regards to canon and all that sort of thing that I was talking about earlier. As TT had also mentioned earlier, great minds do think alike. And Jane says she enjoyed the show. And with that, we will leave our viewers with the last word.